A quorum being present, the special town meeting is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I believe we have a few people that have not been sworn in yet. Would you please rise and we'll have you take the oath of office? Okay, please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent on me as a town meeting member according to the best of my ability and understanding, agreeably to the Constitution and laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and to the charter and bylaws of the town of Reading. So help me God. Well, welcome or welcome back. Oh, you'd like to announce it? Or would like me to announce it? Oh, I'm supposed to announce a password here. Okay, I guess you can see it better than I can. We have the Wi-Fi password. All right, before we begin, it's going to be a little confusing, so I thought I would try to make it a little bit easier to understand. We have a little bit of technical work to take care of. We have a situation which I believe has never exactly happened before. Per section 2241 of our bylaws, notice of reconsideration of action under Article 3 has been made. The bylaw further states that this must be the first order of business at the next session of town meeting, in this case, tonight. Since we're still in the middle of debate on a motion under Article 4, we must first lay Article 4 aside temporarily so we can legally fulfill that requirement. This is the scenario we'll follow. We'll hear a motion to lay Article 4 on the table. Assuming we vote in the affirmative, we'll then hear a motion for reconsideration on Article 3. I believe that the plan is to then lay that on the table immediately, allowing us to return right away back to the business under Article 4. Presumably, once the business under Article 4 is complete, we'll return to the issue of reconsideration of business under Article 3. Everybody understand that? Okay. Okay, Mr. Ensminger moves that we lay the motion under Article 4 on the table. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? The motion carries. Mr. Ensminger?
Move to reconsider the vote taken on Article 3 at the special town meeting session of April 28th, 2014.
Is there a second? Second, Mr. Ensminger.
Move to table the motion to reconsider Article 3.
Okay, is there a second? Second. All those in favor of laying the motion to reconsider Article 3 on the table, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries.
Move to take Article 4 from the table.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? The motion carries. Article 4 is back before us. Mr. Croft.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Moderator. We needed the clear and negative tone from the floor on Monday night in order to redirect our energies toward a more positive, professional solution. Furthermore, it is clear to the school committee and the 19 members of the Early Childhood Learning Center Committee that the predominant priority for the district's future will be the construction of a rationally planned and placed early childhood learning center. Our students of the present and the future must be content, happy, and competitive on a level playing field. And thus, I'd like to introduce a voice of the school committee and the district's future to initiate what should be a positive redirection for Reading students. Thank you. This is Mrs. Jean Borowski.
Ms. Borowski?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Jean Borowski, Precinct 6, and I am a newly elected member of the school committee. I'm speaking tonight with the unanimous support of the school committee. We appreciate deeply the time that this body has already devoted to this topic, so I'm going to keep this statement incredibly short. I timed it this afternoon. It's less than 4 minutes. At our meeting on Tuesday, the school committee had the opportunity to discuss Monday night's debate about our proposed solution for solving the space needs at the preschool and elementary levels. As a school committee, we appreciated hearing the different perspectives on this proposal. It appears to us that there are 3 main areas of concern with the proposed project. The first is whether or not moving forward with publicly funded full-day kindergarten and expanding space at the Rise Preschool should be town priorities. It is the continued strong conviction of your school committee that these must be town priorities. Reading parents clearly want full-day kindergarten. 10 states already require it. The percentage of Reading students enrolled in full-day kindergarten has increased dramatically over the last 10 years to its current level of 72%. The majority of towns in Massachusetts already offer it, and the state is offering funding to encourage those who don't. Many of our neighboring communities already have publicly funded full-day kindergarten for all students, and towns that don't are working towards it. There's no longer any debate about whether publicly funded full-day kindergarten is in our future. The only question is when and how. The proposed expansion of the Rise Preschool is an equally important initiative. We offer the Rise Preschool program to comply with federal and state law that require it. Rise Preschool has inadequate space for mandated programs and services, and it cannot meet enrollment demand. I know I don't need to tell anyone in this room that a strong town requires strong schools. The school committee continues to believe that these investments in early childhood education will be critical to our ability in the future to continue to provide a nationally recognized education for the students of Reading. The second concern raised Monday was about the particular site selected by the working group. We have heard the concerns about the proposed site, and we will work to address them as we move forward. Tonight, the school committee is going to propose to indefinitely postpone this motion so that we can gather additional information, including conducting a geotechnical study on the Oakland Road site. That's the site across from the parking lot, not the parking lot, and a traffic study in the Oakland Road area. By gathering the additional information, the school committee and the community will have a clearer picture of this site and location. Indefinitely postponing this motion will also allow us to address the third concern that we heard voiced on Monday evening. There's clearly a desire in this community to discuss how this project stacks up with all of the other community priorities that we have here in this town. The school committee is comprised of town meeting members, taxpayers, residents, and 2 of us are former finance committee members. We're not insensitive to this question, but it does fall outside of our purview. So, while we step back to do more work to examine the proposed and alternative solutions to this problem, we will work in collaboration with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee over the summer as they prioritize upcoming capital projects in Reading. The space needs at our preschool and elementary schools are real, and they are getting worse every year. Next year, for the 3rd year in a row, every single classroom at our preschool and every single classroom at our elementary school will be used. We are currently out of compliance for special education space across the district, and our classes at the elementary level are increasing past the school committee guidelines because we do not have adequate classroom space. We look forward to working collaboratively and creatively with the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, town meeting members, and the wider community to do what Reading has traditionally done: work hard to provide the best possible education for all students in Reading while respecting our town's limited resources. On behalf of the school committee, I move that the motion under Article 4 be indefinitely postponed.
Is there a second? Second. Further discussion? Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Brown, Precinct 8. When I grew up and went to school, I learned that it was a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I did not learn that it was a government of the school committee, by the school committee, and for the school committee. If they don't like the action that this town meeting takes, don't run for school committee. Secondly, I heard...
Mr. Brown, please keep your comments
okay.
non-personal.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I also heard and understand that if it was built across the street, it would cost $2 million more. However, if the parking lot is built across the street, it takes a potential of $2 million income, so that's a wash. Thank you.
Further discussion? Mr. Arena?
I wanted to build on the comments that Ms. Borowski made and suggest that a cross-functional team of the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, and School Committee formally work together to identify a path forward. The discussion tonight included some dialogue regards anticipating a relocation next door. And I'm not sure that such a conclusion drawn after 48 hours of support for an alternative site represents the right perspective. I'll say it badly. I support the implementation of the deliverable, the need to educate our children. We got here, remember how we got here. We got here through a process that first had us at Woburn Street for all the right reasons at the time, now has us at the high school. I'm not sure that the location across the street immediately jumps out to me to be ideal. And my proposal would be to have this cross-functional team rewind and take a look at input from the community, input from parents as to where, how, and how much this next proposed effort should cost and be located. In baseball, you get 3 strikes. We've had 2 in the location of this building, and I'm fearful that the tolerance of the community and the patience of the community are going to be strained, and I'm willing to help. So my comments tonight are purely suggestive, but I'll throw my own name in the hat, and I suspect there are others on the Board of Selectmen that would do the same. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes. Mr. Doxer.
Mark Doxer, Precinct 1, member of the Finance Committee, and also a member of the working group that put together a number of the options for where the school could be located. Well, I don't disagree that we all need to work together and talk about kind of how we're going to put this together. I want everybody to remember that a hardworking group of 17 or 19 people did spend quite a bit of time looking at locations, and a lot of this work has been done. And I think that to say a complete reset is probably not the right approach here. I think we have a lot of information. I think there's a lot of information that we can share. But I do think that once people have had a chance to look at that in more depth, you may find that the number of location possibilities are fairly limited, and that Oakland Road is really one that is worth pursuing either for school-related issues, and if not, it's a town-owned property, and it's a property that we need to understand its value and what can really happen there. So I'm very much in favor of taking a look at that property for a very modest cost and taking a look at what we can learn about it in terms of geophysical as well as traffic. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, on the edge. Yes, yes. Yes, you. Actually, the person behind you, and I'll call on you next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Sasso, Precinct 2. So first, I just want to say I think it was a very helpful 3 or 4 days to kind of get a reset, in my mind anyhow. I have a couple comments and questions, but one point is I actually was able to attend one of the presentations done prior to town meeting. And I know with a lot of things that we're going to be coming up with, I'm trying to make sure and maybe understand how in the future, if there are major presentations like this, that information could be made available so that we don't necessarily have to spend the time within town meeting listening to the same presentation. So a comment, I mean, I know we talked about on Monday night the zoning bylaw question about where potentially we might have a pre-meeting. I don't know, Mr. Moderator, if there's a a concept within the town meeting rules to allow us to have those presentations without necessarily doing it within the meeting itself?
You're looking for presentations at the town meeting?
No. So for example, the school committee, Dr. Doherty presented to the community. They had 5 separate meetings where they basically went through the same information that was presented at town meeting, which, again, I appreciate. We may not all be able to make those types of meetings, but I'm just wondering in the future if there's a way for us to be able to get access to that information so that we're not necessarily, especially if it is being presented in that sort of a form, and I'm thinking more from the zoning, because I mean that's going to take a while to get through. Do we want to take 2 or 3 hours at town meeting to go through that, or can we do it in other chunks so that by the time we get to town meeting, we're spending time talking about the issue and not necessarily listening to the presentation over again? So it's a question. I have some other comment, but that's the first question.
Mr. LaLasher?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. What a perfect opportunity for something I wanted to tell you.
I'm not
The
a
right
plans.
format is to hold a public meeting, and then we can specifically email an invitation to town meeting, but anyone is welcome. And that's how the zoning will work. And for those of you not busy on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, there's a breakfast at Sanborn Place for Economic Development Self-Assessment Tool, and it's free. All town meeting members are even slightly more welcome than anyone else. But the point is, it is very difficult to communicate with people in this town. Everyone has such busy lives. The public meeting is the best way, and we'll always understand we'll never get everyone at one. But I know we've talked a lot about how to communicate the zoning information out, and the same would be true of a building project. All we can really do is hold public meetings, publicize them as best we can, and hope you can come.
All right, thank you. So I just a couple more comments. So first of all, I certainly feel blessed being in Reading and the educational program that is being offered to our children. My son, who's in first grade right now, went through the full-day kindergarten program, and for him, it was the best choice. I think the committees and the community has done the best it can. I am a little disappointed. I think there's been a little bit of a lack of foresight. We've gone through Wood End, we've gone through the high school, and I'm one that's really likes to scrutinize these types of major projects, because not only do they impede an initial investment, but then obviously the ongoing potential. But I think from a benefit, the focus really should be on full-day kindergarten. I think it's a great option. I think based on what we've heard and what I've seen and discussions with folks in my neighborhood, we like that option. It's something that was within the purview of the committee, of the educational program that we have in town. But I think we really need to have a comprehensive plan. And that's something I know a lot of folks have already talked about, not just with respect to the school projects, but everything else that's going on. And I think before we can make decisions on that, we kind of really need to see that laid out. I want to applaud, I think it was raised at one of the meetings where we pulled an idea from, I think it was North Andover, in terms of the half-day, full-day kindergarten in the same class idea. Unfortunately, I've been doing more traveling than I care, and I was just in North Carolina, and they were sharing with me that, well, in this particular district, they had 2 schools, they don't have enough room, so the kids go year-round, and they cycle them through every 9 weeks. In other districts, there are other ideas where they do public-private partnerships. I think the ideas we're talking about that we presented to the committee that worked on this, and by the way, I did, like I say, go to the initial meetings and listen and hear in detail some of the efforts that they went through to look at these sites. I think it was very focused, but it wasn't broad enough in the sense that what are the other options that we as a community need to look at here? If our true goal is to find full-day kindergarten and expand the opportunities for preschool, and we have at least 6 or 7 preschools in the town that I can think of off the top of my head that might be ripe for public-private partnerships where, my son went through one of them and they said, we collaborate closely with the educational groups to make sure that they're in line as well. So I think there's a much broader perspective to these issues than just let's go build a building. And I don't mean to be glib about it or anything. I just, honestly, my perspective has been that we really need to focus on what we can provide. I think, Mr. Arena, your point of how do we get there, what is the goal, is the right objective, and not necessarily let's go build a building. I certainly, I think it's good to hold off on this issue right now, but I do think it needs to be broader. I think there needs to be a bigger view, not only within the project itself, but also within the town. A lot of the feedback I got from my constituents were, hey, what else is out there? What are the things that we're going to be asked to do from a financial perspective? So thank you very much.
Mr. O'Neill?
John O'Neill, Precinct 4. Some of my remarks have been taken, but I fully support full-day kindergarten, but I don't necessarily think that's synonymous with having to support the education center, the early education center. And I think, that I'm kind of frustrated. In the full-size gym, I can see good reasons for the gym. I can see a good reason for the early education center. But one of the things that's troubling to me right now is the fact that 72% are going. I'm worried about the 28%, and the inequality of that. I also think that a full-day kindergarten, not having it, makes us less attractive vis-a-vis other communities around. So that's a concern. It was just mentioned that, nobody has mentioned it, at what point does the public education take over the role of some of these private enterprises, that's in an equal basis, because you're not being taxed, rightfully so. We wouldn't want to change that. But some of these, other organizations, might go out of business. That might be an opportunity. That might be, as the gentleman just mentioned, as far as there are buildings that are built and equipped with the purpose of early education in mind. I really don't like the idea of saying that I want a reset, but I don't want the reset to be, where do we put the early education center? I want us to take a look at what's the best way to make sure we can at least get full-day kindergarten without upsetting the community so much that we get nothing. Thank you.
Further discussion? People that haven't spoken yet, right here in the middle.
Peter Brown, Precinct 8. I want to thank the school committee for withdrawing their motion. That's the right thing to do. Clearly, town meeting was struggling in our discussion, and I think, as I said, you were correct to withdraw the motion. Speaking personally, ideologically, I support the concept of the education center. I support full-day kindergarten. Ideologically, I'm with you. The problem that the school committee and the finance committee, or whoever works on this project, is going to have to resolve is the issue of going to the town 3 times in a short period of time to ask for more money. Town meeting approved the $3.5 million additional spending for the library by basically 90 to 10%. 90 yes, 10% no. When the vote went to the town, the vote was 56 in favor, 44% against. So there's a warning right there. I think I can speak about overrides or operational overrides or debt exclusion overrides because I worked on a campaign in the 1990s. I worked with Dan Ensminger on this campaign, and we were successful in getting an operational override. So I have some experience with it. I also worked on the library campaign because I supported that. The problem is when the finance committee starts the meeting and they say, we need to be thinking about an operational override in 2 years, and we've just had one for the library, how does that fit in with the needs for the school? Because now we're asking for a much bigger amount of money. So the principal, I call it the principal contradiction, is this concept that we're going to go to the voters of Reading 3 times for money. And from my experience, that's going to be a very, very difficult road to hoe. I just don't believe it can happen, honestly. So it's great to think about the site location. I would suggest that, I don't know if this has happened, but I think that, you know, it's possible that we need to be looking at athletic fields or the space behind the building. I can tell you my unofficial traffic study is this year when I was ferrying my 2 kids who are in high school to the building, I live half a mile away. Well, it can take me 15 minutes to drive half a mile if it's at the wrong time. So, and that's different than it was the year before, where generally it would take 5. So there's already a lot of pressure at this site. And even if the times are a little bit off, I still think there's a lot of pressure. So when people are looking at sites, and I think that the study should go forward, you know, one consideration, and maybe someone can speak to this, is that maybe some of the athletic fields need to be sacrificed, or the space behind the building needs to be reconfigured. It's hard for me to see the building over on the side. I think it was the right thing to withdraw. But fundamentally, you need to come to terms, I think, with this issue of how many times you can go to the town and ask for more money. Thank you.
Ms. Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Elaine Webb, Precinct 1, and on the school committee. What I really want to do right now is to invite people to join us at school committee meetings over the next several months on TV or in person. And if anyone did watch us Tuesday night, you'll know that it was a very rich discussion and a very difficult discussion. And I also want to assure the 72% of our parents who are in full-day K that those students actually just did kindergarten screening in their home schools. And part of our discussion on Tuesday night was, could we reduce that and implement the lottery so that we could regain the space we need to be in compliance with our special education programs? The answer to that, as Dr. Doherty told me, is no, because we've already collected that money. So those families and those children are already in our schools. They know which classroom they're going to be in, and they've met their teacher. But next year, and I was on this committee when we first did full day K and we had lotteries. Next year, we are not going to be able to serve that number of people unless we come up with a solution. And I did hear an interesting solution that talked about extending the school day or the school year. And that certainly has had a lot of debate in this community as well. So I really want to encourage people, you know, the 6 meetings that Dr. Doherty held, that invitation did go out to all of the town meeting members. It went out to every person who has a kid in any one of our schools. And they were generally pretty well attended. But please listen in. If you can't participate in whatever financial forum type structure is going to be set up over the summer, please, I urge you to listen in and come and be part of our dialogue and public comment.
Further discussion? Yes? Ms. Doxer?
Linda Snow Doxer, Precinct 1, and also a new school committee member. I want to say this is the first time I've participated from here, at the other end of the TV, in town meeting, and I really appreciate the care and the thoughtfulness that people have put into this discussion. It's truly about learning what each other needs and working as a community to find the right solutions, and the right solutions are seldom easy. And so I think this discussion is very important, and I thank everybody for participating in it. I also thank everybody for that was on the working group for all the work they did, the 30 sites that they vetted. I think it's really informational to look at the printouts, the presentations that have been presented. So I just wanted to also give people a heads up that the information is actually accessible at your fingertips. You don't have to check schedules. You can go on YouTube, on RCTV's YouTube page, and this is for the people out there watching TV as well, and you can see an informational session, and you can see a school committee meeting, and you can see a selectman meeting, and you can fast forward. I didn't say that out loud. But you can take the time that you have, interrupt it to feed your kids lunch, and then come back to it. So it's not like it used to be where you have to look at a schedule and plan your life around getting to the TV. It's on YouTube. So I just wanted, that's what I wanted to say. And I fully support full-day kindergarten, not because I believe kids need hours and hours in school and that parents can't do the job, but because there are more core curriculum requirements now than there were before. And I don't believe that kids should be kindergarten children should be sat at a desk and made to learn these. I think they should have time for free play. They should have developmentally appropriate learning time. And the way to do that right now with kids that have already been in preschool, not all kids, my daughter did not go, my sons and daughter did not go to full-day kindergarten, but that was a long time ago. The way now that can facilitate developmentally appropriate learning is to have more time to do it in the peer group with the skilled professional teacher. And I know that my commitment is that our kids are not treated as adults, they're treated as kindergarten kids. And that is something that I will be committed to making sure still happens, working. I know that I've had conversations with others on the school committee that the priority, and someone mentioned the Race to Nowhere article, the priority isn't to get them more stressed out, it's to take more time for the same material so that they're not getting compressed, the material's not getting compressed in the 2.5 hours. Right now, the integrated day kindergarten, where they have the half-day kindergarten in the morning and the full-day kindergarten in the morning and continuing in the afternoon, they do the curriculum piece in the morning to make sure that the half-day kids have access to that. And then the latter part of the day is spent on other activities that help the kids developmentally learn, not nap. And so it's not that they're napping in the afternoon, it's that it just spreads out what they need to learn, what the state expects them to learn, what the teachers are held accountable for teaching. So thank you very much for listening.
Further discussion? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Harry Simmons, Precinct 4. I think that all of us here are proud of our educational system in Reading. And I think philosophically, whether it's mandated or not, full-day kindergarten is important. RISE is important, and we want to go to that. But the elephant in the room is money. If you've been listening to town meeting, it's about money. Mentioning an override possibility. And I know that this committee has worked many times. We looked at Woburn Street, we looked at additions to different schools, and we must have information in there that we can look at each of those options, and then maybe it's existing now, that there is cost data on each one of those options. But also, there are parameters that could be adjusted to reduce all of them somewhere. I look at the one at the option at the high school, and we have another gym. We have 7 or 8 gyms in town. Another cafeteria. Is there duplicity here? Is there duplication? Are we mandated to have a gym? Yeah, we want physical education, but we could share in schools like at Coolidge, Barrows. There are several sites where that has been looked at. I would like to see a matrix posted on a site somewhere that has information plus parameters that could be trimmed and still keep the philosophy of the objective that we're trying to reach here. Is there any information on cost and the options that were looked at? No one can answer that?
Mr. Doherty?
How does it compare with 28 million?
So part of the job of the working group was to look at all of the different options, and with the help of AI3, there were costs associated with each of the options.
Okay.
The option that was finally recommended, or the 2 options that were finally recommended to the school committee, the one that was proposed to build on the parking lot site was one of the less expensive options.
Yeah. Are they close? Is there a big discrepancy?
They ranged from about 24 million to about 32 million.
They're all expensive.
Yes, they are.
What about, do we need a gym? on this parking
Well,
lot?
if I could back up, because I've heard this a couple of times tonight, and I thought that I articulated this the other night, and I apologize if I didn't. What you saw the other night was a conceptual drawing. The design study is when you drill down and you truly figure out what are the true needs. The working group recommended, for the conceptual piece, let's put a gym, because that's a community space that the community is going to use. We are maxed out in gym space in this community. All our gyms are constantly being used. We have several community groups in this town that do rent our facilities, and gym space is at a premium. So that was the rationale behind the working group suggesting that. Doesn't mean there needs to be a gym. That was part of the conceptual drawing. The design study drills that down further, and if the footprint needs to be smaller, then those are the types of things you take a look at. But we didn't have the resources to be able to go any further with that.
Well, I would suggest that we look at reducing costs. That's simple. It's hard to do, and maybe you can't get it down, but that will be life.
Right, but that's
the
why,
whole thing about this passing is cost.
Right, and that's what a design study would have done.
Okay.
It would have looked at other options. We didn't have the resources to go any further than we did. That's why it was a conceptual look at it.
Maybe we could post a matrix somehow on the information that's already been gathered.
Yeah, we could figure out a way to do that.
I think that would be good.
But the other night, part of the presentation, there was a slide that showed all the different cost options.
All right.
That was
all
in
right.
the presentation the other night.
Maybe I should see that. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, Mr. Tucci?
Thank you. Ken Tucci, Precinct 8. The school committee indicates it's going to do a traffic study and the study of the land across the street. I read in the paper that the price tag for that was estimated at $45,000. Is that correct? And whatever the price tag is, where will that money come from?
Mr. Doherty?
It is $45,000. The goal is to try to pay for it out of the school department's FY14 budget.
At what cost? To what other? What wouldn't you spend that? What would you be spending that on if you were not doing this? Is that what you mean? You're going to take it from your budget?
Correct.
Okay. So is that like roughly a cost of a teacher?
Well,
or where,
it's
what
the
will
current
you?
budget it's the current budget that we're in now. It's not next year's budget.
You have leftover.
It would be any money that we would be at the end of the year moving back to the town.
Okay. So it wouldn't affect.
No,
that.
it would not.
Okay. Great. That was my question.
We're very cognizant of the fact, that resources are tight. We're trying to creatively find a way to fund this because we know it's additional information that is going to be required, whether it be for a school or for something else, that this information is going to be important.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? In my far corner, yes.
Hello, Sean Quinn, Precinct 8. I'll keep this brief. To me, it seems like there's a clear need for space in the town of Reading for the schools. I think the school board articulated in their request to indefinitely postpone at the onset of the meeting that they heard the feedback from Monday, which I think was a really great debate, and that debate continues today. But they heard the feedback, and they want a chance to take that feedback and do something with it and come back with a comprehensive plan. I think we should let them do that. So I'm strongly in favor of the motion that's been put forth. And I'd like to, I don't know, Mr. Moderator, how I do this, but I'd like to make a motion to cap the time that's allowed for further debate because I think it's time to let them get back to work.
That needs to be done by somebody that has not spoken.
Great. If someone else could do that, I'd strongly appreciate it.
Yes. Move the question. We have a motion to end debate. Is there a second? Second. This requires a 2/3 vote. Mr. Segalia, would you take your section plus the Finance Committee? Mr. Crook, would you take your half of the middle? And Mr. Rushworth, would you take the other half of the middle section? And Mr. Pacino, would you take my left as well as the Board of Selectmen? Now we're voting on ending debate. All those in favor of ending debate, please rise.
Twenty-six.
26?
Correct.
20.
20.
33.
33? 30. And those opposed?
Five.
5?
7.
7?
8.
8? Mr. Zagalia? How many voted no?
5.
Oh, 5, okay. The vote being 190 in the affirmative and 25 in the negative, the question has been moved. We will now move to the motion to indefinitely postpone. All those in favor of indefinite postponement of the article of the... 109. Must be my cold, I'm sorry. All those in favor of indefinite postponement, please raise your hand. And those opposed, the motion carries. Business under Article 3, Mr. Ensminger.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move to take the motion to reconsider Article 3 from the table.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, and the motion carries. Mr. Ensminger.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My intention of filing for reconsideration of Article 3 was to create a vehicle for town meeting to rescind the addition of $485,000 to the FY14 capital plan for the school schematic design, should Article 4 not prevail. Article 4 has now been postponed. A yes vote on this motion to reconsider Article 3 will vacate Monday night's vote on Article 3 and will therefore hit the reset button on the capital plan by deleting the $485,000 for the school schematic design. Effectively, we're hitting the reset button. We're going back to where we were at 7:30 p.m. Monday night. So this cleans the whole slate for future debate. At such point in the future, when the school committee brings forward a different plan to a future town meeting, the capital plan can and will be amended accordingly for the appropriate amount.
Is there discussion on the motion to reconsider? None appearing. This requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of reconsideration of Article 3, please rise. That's the same counters, by the way. Thirty-two. 33?
27.
27?
43.
43. And those opposed?
No. I don't know. I'm not supposed to.
0?
2.
2?
0.
0?
0.
0. Oh, 1. Okay. The vote being 135 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. The motion under Article 3 is being reconsidered. Mr. Ensminger?
Moderator, move to lay Article 3 on the table.
Let me think for a second. We're back to where we started. So
The motion's been vacated, so we can actually just
I think we need to actually vote it down. I think it... We have reconsidered the question. Now the question is before us. As it was, yeah. Right, yeah. I'd like to...
Move to indefinitely postpone the subject matter of Article 3.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? None appearing. All those in favor of indefinite postponement of the motion on Article 3, please raise your hand. And those opposed? And the motion carries. What's that? Yeah. All right. Mr. Arena, do you have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion to adjourn sine die the special town meeting. All those in, second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, motion carries. The special town meeting stands adjourned, and we are now back into the annual town meeting. We left off, I'm sorry. Did you have do you have an issue? Oh, sorry. Okay, we're back into the annual meeting, excuse me. We left off at Article 3, instructions. Mr. Ensminger moves that we lay the substance of Article 3 on the table. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And substance of Article 3 is laid on the table. Business under Article 4, Mr. Halsey.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. The motion under Article 4 for the 2004 annual town meeting moved that the town vote to amend the FY 214 through 23 capital improvements program as provided for in Section 7-7 of the Reading Home Rule Charter and as previously amended by making the following changes.
Mr. Arena moves that we dispense with the further reading of the article, of the motion, excuse me. Is there any objection? None appearing. Is there a second to the motion? Second, thank you. Mr. LaLasher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Town meeting members, again, putting items in the capital plan is largely ceremonial. It doesn't actually spend any money. As I mentioned in the write-up for your warrant before we had decided the outcome of the special town meeting, or even if there would be one, the amendment, if you will, to the book, but the motion in front of you does obviously not include the $485,000 item. The other items I'll go over quickly, especially for FY14. Later tonight, you'll hear a debt article for $300,000 additional for the West Street project. We'll explain why that's the local share. And then there's a couple of rearranged capital items adding to $47,000, excuse me, below that. Largely to just take care of some of the damage done by the winter. There's also some rearranging in FY15 that don't add up to much.
You all set? FinCom report, Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Finance Committee recommends all the proposed amendments to the FY14-23 capital budget by a vote of 9-0-0 at our meeting on March 26th. When we put items in the capital improvement program, doesn't mean they're necessarily spending the money for that.
Is there further discussion? None appearing. Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor of the motion under Article 4, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Traditionally, we try to start the budget early in the evening. So Mr. Arena moves that we take Article 13 out of order and take that up next. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 13, Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town move to approve the fiscal years 2015-2024 capital improvements program as provided for in Section 7-7 of the Reading Home Rule Charter and as previously amended.
Is there a second? Second, thank you. Mr. LaLasher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This one's even simpler. It takes what you just did, chops off FY14, puts in something in FY25, moves the capital plan 1 year ahead.
Mr. Berman, a FinCom report.
FinCom on a vote of, on March 26th voted 9-0-0 in favor of the article.
Is there further discussion? And appearing, all those in favor of the motion under Article 13, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 14, Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town raise by borrowing or from the tax levy or transfer from available funds and appropriate the sum of $93,176,884 for the operation of the town and its government for fiscal year 2015 beginning July 1st, 2014.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Mr. LaLasher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First, I'd like to ask Town Accountant Sharon Engstrom to come up and begin the presentation.
I'm quickly going to go over the reserve position for the town. The town started fiscal 14 with just over $7.5 million of certified free cash. In November at town meeting, we approved the reduction of free cash for fiscal 14 by $75,000. At February town meeting, we voted to use another $400,000. And tonight, I actually have to update this number because this 2.7 that's showing actually includes $485,000 for the schematic design for the school because it was unclear how that was going to go. So actually, we have some proposed uses tonight that total about $2.3 million in free cash, leaving us with just about $5 million. Then we have our general fund stabilization, which is 1.5, and FinCom reserves of 138, giving us a grand total of about $6.7 million in reserves, which represents 8.4% of our net available revenues. Bond rating agencies do look for reserves to be somewhere in the area of 8 to 10% for favorable interest rates, and we are going to be looking to bond for the debt. So it's very important that we try and stay in that area, and where we're at 8.4, that's, you know, at a reasonable percentage. Just want to talk a little bit about how free cash is regenerated. We vote a balanced budget, revenues equal expenditures, and so free cash is regenerated when we collect more revenues than we budgeted or we spend less in expenses than we budgeted. In recent years, we've been very, very fortunate to regenerate quite a bit of free cash, but not every year is the same, and different things cause that regeneration each year. So they can't really be relied on, but it seems like a minimum we always regenerate somewhere in the arena of 500,000, and so use of 500,000 seems to be somewhat neutral and has very little impact on our end certified cash. But anything more than that, you start to run the risk that you don't regenerate, and so you could have your free cash balance declining. This slide shows the projected revenues for fiscal 15 as compared to fiscal 14. You'll notice that the rate of increase year over year without free cash is 1.6%, and with it's 2.4%, and those percentages probably look very low to you. And the reason for that is in fiscal 14, we had a transfer in the other available funds from the MSBA Reserve Fund for $817,000. That transfer was to pay the final debt payment on the high school debt that was owed from the MSBA. And then we are getting nothing in fiscal 15, so it looks like a reduction of about 1% in our revenues. So if that was eliminated, you'd be looking at more like 2.6% or 3.4% with free cash. I also want to point your attention to state aid, which doesn't seem to be going up very much at all in fiscal 15, only about 0.8%, so it's not really helping us out very much there. And our reserves are projected to be used at $1.7 million for fiscal 15, and in fiscal 14 we only used about $1 million, so we're a significant increase there. And at that level, I think it'd be very optimistic for us to anticipate that we will regenerate all of that. It's possible, but I wouldn't bet money on it for sure. So I just want to give you that side note.
Mr. LaLasher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just so the town meeting members understand how we're going to proceed, I'm going to give a couple of brief remarks, as brief as I can, and then we're going to go over all the town budgets just from sort of a lecture standpoint. Then Dr. Doherty will come up and review the school budget, and I'll finish off with the enterprise fund budgets. At the conclusion of all that, we'll go back, Finance Committee will make motions one at a time, and we can open it up for discussion on each line item, just so you understand how we're proceeding. Monday night took away a lot of the need for some of my opening remarks. But I do understand there's a frustration in the community. There's a lot of things that all of us want to provide to the community and know they need it and know they want it. We don't have the money. It's really quite as simple as that. We have, in the last few years, opened up some new partnerships with other communities, certainly. I was at one of them today. We've had recent discussions with nonprofit organizations and, frankly, private organizations to try to explore sharing. It's something that all of us are being forced to do, and there's nothing wrong with it. We have to just be very open-minded and very creative. But the bottom line is the town, and I'll speak for the schools, will do the best job we can to provide selfless service. And I want to just make a couple comments on that so town meeting understands. You don't see the employees that work in the town and the schools necessarily every day. But it's really quite a privilege and quite a remarkable thing when someone at town hall reaches into their own pocket and never tells anyone and goes out and buys food for someone that needs it. It's also very remarkable for the teacher that does the same thing for school supplies. As my job is to look very far ahead, I'm concerned that we're not going to find these kind of employees forever. It's really a time for the community to understand how much value they're getting, not only from the work we do long-range planning, but from the actual employees that you have. You're getting a lot more value than the dollars in the budget, and certainly you're getting a lot more volunteerism in the community, and it's impossible to measure how much value you're getting added there. As Mr. Arena mentioned in his remarks, we really have only a few choices. We can reduce some of our services, and this may not be in the next year or in the next 2 years, but it's going to happen. Or we can choose to reduce the quality of the services, and that's not something Reading has consciously ever done, but I can tell you it's something other communities do. Maybe we slow down our responsiveness in certain areas. We can pay more to keep both those things, or we can pay even more to add new services. As has been mentioned, clearly there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen this summer. The problem that I see is, at this point, we really need to solve this problem locally. The state has a 5% revenue projection for next year. They're giving us a 1% increase in state aid. A 5% increase wouldn't have been another $500,000. If we can't trust the state and rely on the state to pass along revenue, and I understand they have all kinds of issues, we need to solve it here. We need to solve it starting in this room. I don't know how to solve it, but I do know that the collaboration in this room and in this community will do it. And I just wanted to make a comment because I've been approached both before and after Monday night's town meeting with some very well-intentioned people that want to add to the town's budget. And I'll give you the same answer I gave to the Finance Committee. They asked me, if we got a little bit more money, what would you do with it? I explained a public service or public safety need that was pretty important. And I said, I am not hiring anyone to fill that need until I know we can sustain it, and that will be next January. So for anyone that desires to add a service or add some funding to the town's budget, I won't oppose that, but I can't use it until I absolutely know that I can sustain whatever that thing is we're going to do. So I just wanted to be clear about that. I appreciate the thought. There's plenty of information in your budget book. I don't intend to spend a lot of time. But you can see the general fund expenses are up 2.5%, matching the revenues that Sharon mentioned. And water and sewer are a little bit skewed because town meeting in November voted a very large capital project in water. If it weren't for that, the water and sewer would be 3 to 4%. From that last slide, for those of you that don't remember, the easiest way to look at the budget is 50% schools, 50% municipal government, 25% municipal government, that was wishful thinking, and 25% other. And the other is things like debt, capital, benefits, and shared costs. One of the first line items you'll be asked to vote is B99 benefits, which is, it's a variety of things. You can see in the slide, I put a reference, pages 40 to 49, and then later. For once, these other areas that usually detract from the operating budget are actually very well behaved. On balance, these other shared costs, this 25% that usually causes us trouble, is actually lower next year. Again, some of that is somewhat of a false economy. We're not proposing to use any one-time money to do extra paving work as we've done for a few years in a row. We just simply, with the West Street project and all the other work, we don't have the capacity. Specifically in benefits, the first line you'll look at, they're pretty well behaved. 4.6%, though, against the revenue of 2.5% is not too good. And I was reminded at breakfast with a leader of a city this morning. He asked, what % of your revenue is property tax? I said, about 70. And I was all ready to cry and complain and whine. And he said, mine's 35. I wish I had 70% of my revenue that I knew was going to go up 2.5% every year. So we have to be reminded that everything is in its context. 4.6% benefits is not so good against 2.5% revenues. It's a lot better than a lot of other communities in the private sector that are still seeing double-digit increases in health insurance. Our health insurance increase this year was 7.8%, which is the highest it's been in 5 or 6 years. The insurer told us 3% of that is the federal mandate, and the rest of it is on us, 4.8%. Hard to judge what we could have done differently. 4.8% isn't so bad. Health insurance is still an issue that's a crippling one to both small businesses and small governments. It's something we're going to just have to do our best. In collaboration with the PEC, which is all of our unions, school, town, and light department, we are going to go out to bid for health insurance next fall. That's usually a good reset button to make everyone sharpen their pencil. We'll see where it goes. The other area I'd like to just spend a couple of minutes on is capital and debt. The Finance Committee, about 10 years ago, introduced a new policy to make sure we spend 5% of our money on capital or debt. Doesn't really matter. Debt's just a way to finance capital. Before that, debt and capital was sort of the last one at the table. If there was money left, we'd buy a truck. If there wasn't, we wouldn't. Some of our fleet was in very bad shape. Some of our facilities weren't in the best of shape. Once we introduced this discipline, you can see the results. Our facilities are in excellent shape. By and large, our capital fleet is in excellent shape. The benefit of that, aside from just having good things, is it's greatly reduced the operating budgets for both energy and for repairs. We used to regularly, and when I mean regularly, I mean every single year at this time of town meeting, ask for another $100,000 for public works equipment repairs. We haven't asked in several years because the capital plan took care of that. In the future, as we sort of struggle over how to find money for the operating budgets, we're now in a place where I think we can trim capital spending just a little bit. 5% is okay. 4.5% is probably okay. But we don't want to ever go back to the days where it's the last one at the party, because we'll get into the same trouble we were in before. So the capital number you'll see in front of you as proposed by this Finance Committee policy is just over $2 million. I certainly won't go over the items. They're all on the blue pages of your book. But as is always the case, they're widely spread throughout the town and the schools. The other thing we've tried to consciously do in the last 10 years is stop using debt so much. Interest is a complete waste of money, not so much for the investor, but for the town. Interest is a last resort, and there's good uses of it. If you are building a library, obviously you can't afford it in 1 year, but even if you could, it makes sense to spread it over the use or the life of the users, so that if a library is going to be useful for 50 years or 25 years, everybody should pay. So people move in and out of town, it's really not right for 1 year's worth of residence to pay for something that many, many years are going to benefit. Everyone's always interested in roads. We've done a really good job spending money on roads in the last few years, and next year we're actually proposing to spend a little less. But that doesn't include, again, the West Street project. We spent a lot of money. The roads are still pretty bumpy. I know the former town manager stood up in front of you 4 or 5 years ago and asked for an override or an exclusion. I think it was an override. No, it was an exclusion to work on roads. There's no easy answer for roads. Last year, the state promised us $900,000 in Chapter 90. They passed a budget that would fund $900,000. The legislature approved that budget. The governor signed it. The governor has only released $600,000. He will not release the last $300,000. It's politics. I don't need to get into it. This year, at least, they didn't promise the $900,000. They're telling you you're only going to get $600,000. So now we know, exactly what we're going to do. So it's been a little difficult to capital plan. When we thought we might have $900,000, we only end up with $600,000. So not quite as many roads got done in the current year. But we're on a place to more or less maintain the quality of our roads. Last winter was very tough. Last winter aside, we're pretty much keeping even. But to actually get ahead, this is another area, one of the few in capital, that we really have never fully solved. We would really need a good amount of money to get on top of the road quality issue. Again, you'll be asked for $300,000 to increase the West Street project, and we will get into that. There's been some discussion about all the projects out there that are possible. One is a DPW garage. Right now, there's $3 million in the capital plan, but not for FY15, for future discussion. And there's some words on some excluded debt. I'll spend a little more time than usual on vocational education because it's going to become a pretty important topic, not quite so much in Reading. We're members of the Northeast Regional Metropolitan Vocational School in Wakefield. There's 11 other communities. It goes all the way down to Everett and Chelsea and up to Reading and North Reading. It's a very interesting mix of cities and towns. The Voc School needs a new facility. The good news is, in that case, the MSBA is going to reimburse them about 70%. They are going to need a unanimous vote from all 12 cities and towns in order to build a new building or to renovate their current building. I was at a meeting this morning actually with the superintendent, and his strong preference, being Yankee, is to fix up what they have. It's a 46-year-old school. It's the third worst structure in the state for schools, according to the MSBA. But the good thing is they have labor that goes to school there, and so they've been fixing it up themselves for many years. And I have to say, they've done a remarkably good job. That's going to be an issue that this town is going to have to face in the upcoming probably 2 or 3 years. But we're only going to have to pay 2% of the cost because we have a very small enrollment. The other issue in vocational schools, which is a little difficult to track, is we have some students going out of district from the Northeast Regional Metropolitan Vocational School. We now send students to 2 different schools, Minuteman and to the newly merged, it used to be Essex Aggie, it's now North Shore Essex. Minuteman you've seen before in the budgets. We've had to appropriate certain money. It's more expensive than the local school. Essex Aggie is a new one. Because of the merger, they also built a new school. Tuition went to naturally the higher level of the 2 communities, which was not the one we were in, and then went up quite a bit more. In the past, we never even paid tuition. It was part of the cherry sheets. So in FY14, there was a $12,500 odd item listed for tuition for Reading students in Essex Aggie. Dr. Doherty and I were quite surprised to only a few weeks ago find out that next year's bill is going to go up to about $95,000. We have 4 students there. They forgot to tell us there was 3 this year. They only budgeted for 1. It didn't matter. We didn't pay. We're trying to get together with our local Voc School and the other 11 communities and the superintendents to try to offer more in-district services so the students don't have to leave the district. It's much cheaper to send the students in-district than it is out. The tuition is significantly different, and we have to pay for transportation when it's to another community. Now I'll spend a little time going over the town government. There it is as a snapshot behind you. The budget is up a little over 3%. There's a couple of areas where a little bit more was needed than the average, and a couple that it was a little bit less. I'll get to the administrative services when we go over that budget. There's really remarkably few changes in the budget. I guess the next slide will show that. I didn't include this. I probably should have in your packet. Some people asked for it. we're increasing by a little bit more than 1 FTE next year. The one full FTE is a new position created in the fire department to be a number 2 person, an executive officer, and that was 100% funded by an increase in ambulance fees. So the Board of Selectmen a few months ago voted to increase ambulance fees to a level still 10% below the area average. And that by itself is enough to fund this position. Otherwise, we have additional clerical hours in the budget. Otherwise, there's really no change. I guess the other point to be made here is we've almost caught up to the peak employment, but not quite. We're still behind where we were. If you look at every department's highest employment level, we've almost caught up to that, but not quite. The Administrative Services Department is newly created by town meeting in November, and thank you very much for that. It's been a lot of work. It's really going to be a very powerful group. It's centralizing some things have really already paid off very handsomely. Procurement was always done in a very decentralized way. It took a lot of people's time and a lot of effort. By centralizing it with 1 or 2 people, it's tremendous how much more efficient that is. Again, there's an increase in clerical hours. We also hired the former town accountant to help us out in a temporary basis for 15 months or 18 months. She started in the winter. What she's doing, which is something that came up time and time again in the school budget discussion, the town budget discussion, and certainly in the libraries, was a need to look at strategically how we're using technology. We bought all this fancy stuff. Some of the sales promises were a little bit ahead of actually what they had, and now we're trying to use it. Technology is a tremendous way to use leverage to be very efficient and very inexpensive. But you have to be exceptionally good in the municipal service to know how to integrate it. We are the most integrated technology town government that there is around. Melrose is very close. They like to say they're ahead. They're very close. The problem is none of the software you buy to do all these different things talks to each other very well. The vendors say it does, but nobody ever really wants it to, so it didn't have to. Well, we wanted it to, and we actually really wanted it to. Our town government is more centralized and much more cohesive. We talk to each other. We actually work together. Many of the towns still work in silos, and it's very inefficient, and their software is all very segregated. This temporary position should run through just about a year from now, and her deliverable is to come up with a lot of analysis of all the software we currently have and the ideal ways to staff the technology function, which I know is a big issue in the schools and in the library as well, and how to use it going forward. Technology will help us creatively budget a great deal. But technology is not the only thing in municipal government that's going to help. There's a lot of problems and a lot of interest from the community that require a person to answer you. Technology is not going out and taking the fallen tree and digging the hole and so on and so forth, but it'll help. Community services is still quite a bit behind where it was a few years ago in terms of staffing. It's an area that we've seen significantly increased demand, both in commercial activity for building and in social services needs. As the economy took a downturn, as businesses laid people off and as governments laid people off, more of those people needed us there, just like they needed the library to come to. So it's almost a contrary indicator. As the economy went down, they needed us more. This year, we were able to add a half-time position, a social services person. We're going to be able to continue that next year. This body also last November approved a regional position, which I think will be very helpful. We thought it would start with 5 communities. Now we know it'll initially start with 4 to work on the problem of affordable housing. We have a regional agreement with Melrose and Wakefield in health that's working very well. We've looked at a similar arrangement with other towns, specifically in recreation. I really tried my hardest to get the lake in Wakefield, but I failed. They were very interested in having our help, but didn't want to give that up, but I did try my best. The newly reorganized finance department is a lot smaller than it used to be. There's really not a lot to discuss there other than there is a regional agreement with Wakefield to share the chief assessor. That has worked phenomenally well. I'm very, very happy with the results of that. As you probably recall, the assessing function does a major revaluation every 3 years. Last year we had that expense, next year we don't, so some of those expenses drop off. Public safety is the largest single expense in the municipal government. You can see from the lines there. I did want to first thank the anonymous town meeting member. I got to find the page. Over the weekend, I found an error in one of the tables on page 74. The report is right, the title is right, but one of the tables had one number that was wrong in the whole book, and I figured no one's ever going to see that. Well, somebody called the town clerk today and said, there's an error on page 74. So whoever you are, I'm very proud that someone reads this stuff. Under the FY15 column, the total of wages, if you were to add all those figures, is really $8,886,000, which is the number that's on top. So I just did want to point out that that's the one error that I found, at least. The police budget does not propose any changes in staffing levels. Again, town meeting last November did approve a reorganization, which will be fully in place by July 1st. I was part of the assessment center to analyze the senior staff especially, and I will share one comment that came from 3 retired police chiefs that we were interviewing for deputy chief, and our deputy chief sitting in the front row, but I won't embarrass him. The 3 candidates that interviewed for that job, according to the retired police chiefs, were stronger candidates than he had ever seen for a police chief job. So I have to tip my cap to our current police chief and the whole department. It is very, very well thought of in this state and does a great job. That's good because you owe me now. The dispatch function is also very efficiently run. We have looked for about 4 years to regionalize this with several other communities. It seems to be a logical thing to do. It has really not gotten very much traction, and I think we're to the point of just about giving up for now. Honestly, if we had regionalized, Reading was not going to get much from it at all. In the long run, it's a good idea, but we're already running so efficiently that all the other communities would have saved money. We wouldn't have. They still didn't want to do it. One of my concerns in the dispatch area, and I won't belabor the point, is we run many overnight shifts with one dispatcher. That's not really safe anymore. It used to be okay because the dispatchers are certainly very fast and very clever, and they used to be able to work very flexibly. Now the insurance/state/medical rules prescribe the exact course of action each dispatcher must do. They cannot disconnect one call in any way to transfer to another one. They have to finish the whole procedure completely before they can deal with a second person. We are going to need to have a minimum of 2 on the staffing for dispatch in the near future. We couldn't afford that now. We will have to ask for it in the future, though. The fire department budget is up a little bit more than most, again, because of that addition of the number 2 position. And I'll tip my hat to the fire chief, because if I don't, he'll hit me. He has been doing the work of 4 for many, many years. Now he'll only have to do the work of 3. There's an amazing amount of paperwork in the emergency management sector especially. The amount of work that the chief does just to get reimbursement from FEMA on a storm is unbelievable. And they find errors of 12 cents sometimes. So your federal government is hard at work for you. You know, this number 2 position in the fire department will take some of this paperwork load off the chief. And I have to again say that the fire department is the envy of many, particularly because of the ALS. The advanced life support offered in Reading is something I hope none of you ever have to use or need. But when you do and it's there, it's something that is priceless. Now you're even. Let's see, how can we get applause for DPW? We are adding a small expense to the DPW budget. It's a part-time cooperative education student. That doesn't really show up in the FTEs because it's such a brief tenure. But we have found in the past that students from local schools that are interested in engineering are very helpful and very motivated. They work specifically on projects. So this year, as I mentioned before in the capital plan, we couldn't afford to do any more road work than we are, especially because of West Street. So a student was going to help on the project level. We do have a new expense. We have a lot of gravel up at the compost center, way in the back. At some point, we're going to start to dispose of that. So there's a small amount in the budget this year to start doing that. And I want to talk a little bit of snow and ice. The selectmen in their budget deliberations in January decided for the first time in a while to level fund snow and ice. It's kind of like when I bought a snow blower, it didn't snow, so they're hoping for the best. Generally speaking, snow and ice is the only municipal government item that I think on purpose you underfund. For one thing, it can be if we didn't have free cash, it could be pushed into an expense as the next year. But the point is, do you not want to hire a teacher or a police officer or a firefighter, et cetera, because you over budgeted snow and ice? No. You don't really want to have excess snow and ice money because you could have provided a service with that. As long as we have a good free cash position and we're under budget by $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, that's okay. This year was a little bit worse. We were about $600,000 under budget this year. It was a very tough winter. With RMLD, we're seeing tremendous strides in a partnership in the street lighting costs. These costs are down $75,000 over the last couple of years. They've applied for a grant to do LED street lights across the whole town if they get it. So the RMLD and the new general manager is being extremely creative, and they understand the pressures on municipal government budgets, and they're trying to help, and I really appreciate that. It's been well discussed and advertised, the successes of our recycling program. For any of those of you that forget to put your recycling out and your trash isn't picked up, you'll be reminded of that. Our rubbish costs are also down significantly. For the first time in next year's budget, we have to actually increase our recycling costs because we're recycling so much, but that's okay. Lastly, the library. They're going to have a challenging year as they relocate to temporary quarters. They'll be in those quarters approximately 18 months, possibly longer, starting sometime in the fall. Their budget is largely unchanged, sort of from a top-down standpoint, but underneath that, they obviously have to rearrange their staff significantly. They're going to be going into about 1/3 the same space. They've talked about things like going out to the community and having a more mobile book distribution. They already do that now for some of the housebound seniors. They're interested in doing it more. So you'll see a pretty creative effort out of the library into how to serve the public as close to the same service level as is possible, which is going to be very challenging during the next year and a half. But certainly the thrill of it will be moving into a beautiful new facility. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Doherty.
Dr. Doherty.
Thank you. Good evening, town meeting members. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment and ask town meeting to recognize the work of Assistant Superintendent Mary DeLay, and this is her last town meeting here in the Reading Public Schools for the town of Reading. For the last 10 years, Mary has been a familiar face with town meeting. She has brought forth to you many creative projects and ideas, and because of her efforts, we have had a very strong relationship financially with the town government, town meeting. Certainly, she will be, as you know, on July 1st, she'll be taking over as superintendent for the Wilmington Public Schools, and clearly Wilmington's gain is Reading's loss. So if we could just thank her for a second. like to take a few moments, and I promise it won't be an hour and 15 minutes like the other evening, to talk a little bit about the FY15 school committee budget. First of all, just want to, when we develop our budgets, which start at the very beginning, pretty much the beginning of the school year, it starts in October. We start that process, we start getting a lot of feedback and input from staff, administrators. Eventually, we move on to the community. We have budget parents that are part of that process. School committee is certainly very much involved. The finance committee has liaisons that come to our meetings. But it's all based on the vision of where we want our school district to go. And really what we are trying to do is develop a school district that is excellent, that services the needs of all children, has a meaningful and relevant curriculum, trying to be as innovative as possible. We like to stay on the forefront of things. We feel that in a lot of ways helps us, because when you don't necessarily have the resources of communities that maybe have a higher per pupil, you want to be on the forefront so that you can be pilot schools and you can do things for less. And so we've really benefited from those opportunities. We want to make sure that we use data effectively and that we take that data and then we're able to make the best decisions, both for student achievement but also for programs and efficiency of services. And I think we've done a very good job of that in the last couple of years. I'm going to show you a slide in a little bit. One of the things that we are continually trying to do, especially in this complex new world of education with a new set of curriculum frameworks, a new set of state assessment coming down the road, and something called district determined measures, which are homegrown in-house assessments, is the need to have the time available for collaboration. And so more and more we are able to be putting together aside and making that a priority in our school district. We also want to make sure that our learning environment is safe for children, both from a physical standpoint but from a psychological standpoint. And you will see a little bit when I'm talking about this evening, we've done a lot in that area over the last few years. This, I'll give you one example, due to the efforts of the Reading Police Department, Officer Corey Sintaski, Chief Cormier, and others, we are one of the few districts right now in Massachusetts that has fully implemented the ALICE enhanced lockdown program for all of our schools. April 1st, we had finished completing all of the drills for all of our schools, and now we have a new set of procedures for that. And then also we want to make sure that we maintain our facilities, and I think we're very proud of the fact that all of our facilities are very well maintained, and it's due to the efforts of our facilities department, our maintenance staff, and our custodial staff. And we also realize, and I think it was very clear on Monday night, that education is a shared responsibility of schools in the community. And we thank you for the support that we have received over the last several years in making that happen. As we move forward, we have 4 main objectives in mind, and you can see them here, and I'm not to go into detail, but the most important one certainly is the learning and teaching piece. But then how do we measure how well we're doing, and what do we do so that we can provide the support necessary for students and for staff to continue to grow? And then how do we invest and develop that staff so that we retain and recruit the best staff that we can? And then how do we keep looking at our resources and allocating them effectively? So these are the 5 areas that we have been working on for the last couple of years and will continue to work on next year. And certainly one of the big things is the implementation of the new curriculum frameworks, both in math and in literacy. And that involves a lot of different areas. It is a pre-K to 12 initiative. Every single grade is involved with that. It is the development of new types of assessments, including the pilot this year of the new online test at the state level called the PARC, which will be eventually replacing the MCAS, or something like it will be replacing the MCAS. Integrating the use of mobile learning devices, which we've increased that number in our district, and making sure that we have a standards-based report card system at the elementary level. We also want to make sure that we develop structures to help address student needs, all students, academically, social, and emotionally, and we have been in the process of doing that over the last couple of years. And we want to make sure that we continue to put a fair system of evaluation in place with the new state model so that staff are using that tool to help grow and improve. And we want to also make sure that as a result of all of these things, that the time is there and built into schedules so that staff have the opportunity to collaborate. And then finally, as you know, on Monday, we want to continue to pursue a long-range plan for expanding early childhood education. So those are the strategic initiatives that we have been following, and our budget reflects those priorities. One of the things I think we're very proud of, due to the efforts of Mary DeLay and our principals and directors, is the management of the funds that town meeting approves. And I've shown this slide for a couple of years now, but I think it's important. I know Mr. Berman and Mr. Arena talked about this in their opening remarks on Monday, but Reading does achieve a high return on investment for education. And you can see here in this chart, and where the arrow points, is that we are in the best quadrant that you can be, where we're a high-achieving, low-spending school district. So that means that the funds that town meeting is approving are used effectively and efficiently every single year. I also want to show you this enrollment chart, and, because it reflects where we are in terms of enrollment. And as I mentioned on Monday, we do not foresee any major shifts in enrollment over the next couple of years. We do see spikes at different levels at various times, and next year that we are going to have an increase in enrollment. We're actually seeing that this week. We had kindergarten screening, and we thought that we pretty much had our registrations for kindergartens in place, but this week we had 8 more students sign up that were not on our radar for kindergarten for next year. So we do see these spikes, and we are constantly we're now entering the new selling season for homes, so we are going to start seeing a little bit of an increase. But as you can see, our enrollment is remaining pretty steady. There aren't any declines, there aren't any major increases, and that certainly helps when developing a budget. I want to spend a couple of slides to talk about per pupil spending, and we've heard a lot about it. Mr. Berman talked about it in his remarks on Monday. But one of the things that you see in this chart here is where we are in terms of the state and how that works. So in the right hand, the final column on the right, what you see is the amount of dollars, for the most part, that we are spending below the state average when it comes to per pupil spending. There are 2 areas that we are spending above. One is professional development, and we feel that this is probably a very good area that you want to be above the state average. This is one of the ways that we can attract, retain, and recruit staff so that they stay in Reading. The other one is payments to out-of-district schools, and a lot of that has to do with the out-of-district placements. And that looks a little bit larger because, unlike other school districts, we don't have a lot of the regional transportation issues that we have regional transportation that other districts do not. And we also want to see, how do we compare with comparable communities? These are communities that are like us when it comes to property value and percent of homeowners versus industry. You can see here that for our total in-district, we rank 12th out of these comparable communities. And then you can see it's broken down into the different areas. Administration is ranked 7th. Supplies, materials, equipment is 8th. Professional development, again, as I mentioned earlier, we are first in that category. And classroom and specialist teachers is 12th. The reason why that category is so low, which we are starting to learn more and more, is that our teacher salaries are lower than the state average. And it is something that we are going to have to address. Those are the types of things that we need to look at so that we don't lose staff to other school districts. Mr. Berman did mention this slide the other night, but this is an area of concern. And this is something that I know that we've had a lot of conversation, that when we presented to the Finance Committee and we've discussed at School Committee, is the declining number as we go down in our per pupil expenditure ranking. And I want to make sure that town meeting understands that what we're saying is not that the town doesn't support education. They certainly do. But I think this is a reflection of the overall revenue issue that we've all been hearing about over both on Monday night and this evening, is that this is a result of that, in that there's less and less revenue, which is going to result in the per pupil going further and further down. Where this is probably reflected the most, again, is in wages and salaries. And again, that is something that is going to have to be addressed if we want to keep and maintain quality people. And this graph shows, I think, a little bit differently, but similar to the chart, you can see that the top is the state average per pupil. Red is where Reading is. The green line shows you the difference of the two. So you can see that the green dotted line continues to go up over the last several fiscal years in terms of the difference between the per pupil of the state average and Reading's per pupil. So taking a look at the summary, as was mentioned earlier, there's been a couple of different school department budgets that have been going along here. And the one that you see, the original school committee budget, FY15, was at a $40,603,540. The FinCom, the town manager's budget was less, and then the FinCom recommended budget is a little bit more, and it's in between the two. So you can see that this evening, the number that you're seeing is the $40,317,793, which is a difference from the school committee budget of $285,747. And I will talk a little bit later about the reductions that had to be made to get to that number. Here are the drivers of the FY15 budget, and the top one is certainly salary expenditures, and we are in the process of negotiating all 5 collective bargaining agreements right now. Over the last 3 years, the collective bargaining agreement, the wage increases for the 5 unions were certainly much less given the economic conditions that we were facing. So what we are trying to do is to get a little bit more in line so that we can remain competitive with comparable communities. Another budget driver is we had some significant increases in special education out-of-district tuition. We had some students this year that moved in from other communities, which we did not have to fund this year, but we will be obligated to fund their out-of-district placements next year now that they're in the community. And we also had a couple of high-cost placements of students that, unfortunately, because of their needs, we're no longer able to service them in district, and we'll need to move them to an out-of-district placement, which also includes an increase in transportation. And then the last budget driver is that there are 4.9 positions in this budget, including a high school social worker, 3.4 special education paraeducators to address services on IEP, and a 0.5 ELL teacher. We are seeing growing need of English language learner students in our community, which they require certain services. And so we do have 1.0 currently of an ELL teacher in the district, but we do require an extra 0.5. So that's where the 4.9 FTE went to. You can see, broken it down by cost center, the 5 areas and the changes from previous years. The regular day, as you can see, the increases again. Most of your classroom teaching staff, regular education paraeducators, secretaries, building principals are in regular day, as well as all of the curriculum materials for the classroom. The special education is pretty self-explanatory, but that includes the special education staff, administration, out-of-district tuitions and transportation. Your district-wide programs are actually 4 smaller areas, including district-wide technology, athletics, extracurricular, and health services. And your school facilities is maintenance and facilities, custodian staff, utilities. You can see that that continues to be on the decline, and the biggest driver behind that is the continued decline in the use of natural gas, which unfortunately I think we may be running towards the end of that line, and I anticipate that in the future we will be seeing an increase in that area. In terms of by cost center, you could see that pretty much over the years there hasn't been much major change in the different cost centers. The smallest one is administration, which is really your central office staff in administration. Regular day is certainly the largest because that's your classroom teachers and materials for instructional activities. But you can see that there's been very little fluctuation over the years in those cost centers. And then this you've probably seen before. This is a different way of looking at it, but it's by function area. And so you could see district administration is the smallest, and your largest chunk, in which it should be, is your instructional services, because the majority of your funding you want to go into the classroom for direct contact with students. And then other school services, which include your special education, out-of-district placement, athletics, operations and maintenance, and then payments to other districts. So here are the budget reductions that we've discussed now at a few school committee meetings, and I do want to explain that the difference that you see at the bottom is $315,000 of reductions instead of the $285,000, which was the difference. And the reason for that, as I mentioned on Monday, we've had to add a half a kindergarten teacher at Barrows because of the size of the room. We had to split the half day into two smaller half days, and we needed to add a half a teacher to do that. So the total that was reduced in the budget is $315,000. The offsets is to take more of the funding from the special education tuition revolving account. Professional development, we felt we could decrease by $75,000 because of we received recently 2 grants, which we will be able to take the place of about $55,000 of that. One is for the implementation of the Massachusetts tiered system of support, and another one is to be able to roll over the remaining Race to the Top funds so that we can use both of those for professional development for the summer. There are 2 classroom teachers in this budget. One is at the high school and one is at the middle school. The high school is a reduction in advisory classes for the freshman level. We do have a smaller freshman class coming in, so we were able to cut the number of advisory classes, resulting in some reduction of sections. And the other piece of that is that we will not, there is going to be a retirement mid-year, and we will not be filling that position for the second half of the year. So those classes will not be offered for the second half of the year. And then the middle school position is for the middle school health teacher in the 7th grade. The technology that you see is part of the replenishment cycle that we have. We have all of our technology in a 5-year replenishment cycle. We feel that we could take a one-time hit on this because of the influx of funding that we received at town meeting in February for the additional computers. We feel that we were able to reduce in this area for next year. And then the consulting services is WADECO services that we've been using for the implementation of MTSS, and we're only going to be using them until December, and then we will no longer be using them, so that resulted in reducing their piece. So that's where the $315,000 comes from. As was mentioned on Monday night in Mr. Berman's remarks, in addition to what we put into the budget, there was also several unfunded items that were not put in the budget, and I know that the town had similar items. And these are, again, these are not nice to have. These are things that we really feel are necessary in our district, but unfortunately the funding just is not there. And It includes things such as behavioral health support, having school adjustment counselors at the elementary level, having more funding for instructional coaches to work with our teachers in implementing the new curriculum frameworks. You know, for example, this year we implemented a whole new math program at our elementary level, and we did not have the coaching support that we felt was needed to do that. And those are things that, you know, that other districts have to be able to implement their curriculum. Also a technology specialist, instructional technology specialist for the elementary. So you could see additional maintenance staff. These are all things that are not luxuries. These are things that we would certainly need, but you do what you can for what we have. And we feel that, again, the impact of what we're doing in terms of the amount of funding that we spend right now, we do get a lot for the dollar. So I just want to conclude by saying that there are certainly challenges ahead. And these are challenges that we are going to be addressing next year, and challenges that we hope that the FY15 budget is going to help us with. And the biggest one, which we are seeing an increased need in, is the social, emotional, and academic needs of our students. Unfortunately, we are seeing more and more students that are becoming hospitalized at all levels, not just at the high school, and that additional support has been needed and necessary. Class size will continue to become a concern as our space needs continue to constrict us. The retaining of staff and attracting new employees. We unfortunately have already started losing staff to other school districts for a variety of reasons, one being that we financially cannot compete with some other school districts. The need to improve and innovate is what I believe keeps this school district moving forward and continues to be creative, and that is something that we want to make sure that we continue to do. It's one of the things I think that does keep people in the district, and that we have a culture where the status quo is not accepted. And so continuing to have that challenge and to find new and exciting ways to improve student learning is important. I already mentioned about creating time for staff to collaborate and the need to do that, and there is certainly funding in this budget to do that. And then the transition, that is a challenge for all school districts, and I hear it every time that with groups of educators, the transition to the new frameworks, the new assessments, and the district determined measures. And certainly that's going to be a challenge on everyone's plate over the next several years. So that really is a snapshot of the FY15 budget, and I appreciate again town meeting's support, not only in past years, but in this year of the budget.
Mr. LaLasher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If you want to.
Delay?
Happily, I'm going to give the briefest presentation of this evening. And this is on the town building maintenance budget, which is not very large and actually is decreasing slightly, projected for next year. We continue to do great work with the town buildings the same way as we do with school buildings. Most of the money that we spend on the town buildings, as you can see, is in the areas of, actually I think it's on the next slide, is in the area of utilities, as well as repair and maintenance, and of course the custodial the custodial services, which includes 3 custodians, as well as outside vendors who clean at 4 of the 7 town buildings during the course of the week. Again, we continue to do really well with respect to our energy conservation and our water conservation and electricity conservation, which helps us to really be able to keep the increases in this budget moderated, as you can see from the last several years, and this continues into next year as well. So that's it for town building meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We'll close up with the enterprise funds. Generally speaking, the enterprise funds have quite a bit of cash in them. The reserve funds are very strong in water, sewer, and stormwater. And that's very helpful because, as you can see from this slide, over half of our costs are determined by someone outside the town, the MWRA. I will say in the last year especially, they're excellent to work with. They're very creative themselves. They're very helpful. They've helped us in areas that have nothing to do with the water, town relationship even, so they're great to work with. But nonetheless, they do determine more than half of our costs. They've done a good job managing their costs. I think their most recent message is the 4s are over. Unfortunately, after 4% increases, I was hoping for 5s, it's 8s. So we'll have to see how that happens. The good thing in Reading is we can use reserves to offset those higher charges if they have to pass them through. And we can also slow down our capital plan. As was mentioned on Monday and some of the questions that were asked, to have a short conversation about the water and sewer capital needs. They're all within the budgets of water and sewer. I wouldn't be concerned about them. There's a study that says we need to do $25 million of work on water pipes over the next 100 years, maybe 50. We've already started to do the first $5 million of work, the most critical 5. We have some sewer repairs that we're doing in the order of less than $10 million over 10 years. It's approximately $6 to $7 million. We'll handle all that within the enterprise funds. It's not a concern in terms of all the other discussions you're having. We think we can keep the enterprise funds running at somewhere between 3 and 5 or maybe 6% depending on the MWRA. In general, some good news from the Board of Selectmen that the vote on rates has already happened. Sewer rates are only going up 1.7%, and water rates only 3%. And the especially good news, and the conservation people can't listen, the water rate increase is going to be delayed 1 quarter next year, so you're going to have 5 quarters worth of the current rates. So you can go crazy and water all your lawns this summer. It's at the old rates. We need to sell water. We're not supposed to say that. We're supposed to conserve, though. And lastly, the stormwater fund is one of those discussions that, again, town meeting and the rest of us will have to have. It's going along at $40 a household. We're able to do some extra work, but 2 things are going to change. One is the federal regulations someday will come down on us. We thought they would have been here 4 years ago. They aren't. Presumably someday they will. They could add quite a burden to the local communities depending on what those regulations are. And again, there's some question as do you do it inside the levy, do you do it outside the levy? This enterprise fund was set up specifically to deal with costs that were not already handled within the 2.5 levy, just to deal with new costs, which is how it's being run. The other portion of that is a substantial capital investment to clean up some of our rivers. Unfortunately, some of our neighbors and friends that live near the rivers, because in some cases the rivers are clogged up, get flooding. It's not a very friendly thing to do to flood your neighbor, but it's a very, very expensive thing to clean up these rivers. And the difficult part, and we've had discussions with some of our neighboring communities, is you can't just fix your portion of the river. It has to be a group effort. But that's another sort of unseen cost that'll be out in the future. It's probably right now in the order of $2 to $3 to $4 million. It's not an urgent and pressing need, but it is a someday need. So that's it for the budget presentations, and now we can go into the motions and handle any questions.
The way we handle the budget is we have it grouped into 17 different sections. We'll have a motion on each one, and that's when you would discussion would be allowed on those line items or any potential amendments. So we'll begin with the first section, the B99. Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item B99 benefits, $14,141,590 to be provided as follows. Line B99, 1.7 million from free cash, 350,000 from overlay, and the balance from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Further discussion? None appearing. We will move on to the next section. Mr. Berman?
Oh. The next one, for reference, is on page 39 in the yellow pages. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item C99, capital $2,042,000 to be provided as follows. Line C99, $150,000 from the sale of real estate fund and the balance from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Is there a second? Second. Further discussion? None appearing. We will move on to the next section. Mr. Berman?
You don't have to worry.
Oh, okay. All right. Never mind. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item D99, debt, $3,377,730 to be provided as follows. Line D99 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Is there a second? Second. Further discussion? None appearing. We'll move on to the next section. Mr. Berman?
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item E99, vocational ed, $387,000 to be provided as follows. Line E99 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Is there a second? Second. All those, excuse me. Is there any further discussion? Not appearing. Move on to the next section. Mr. Berman?
Oh, it's not, okay. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item G91, town administration wages, $1,194,650, and line item
Barry, we skipped one. We'll look on to F99.
Oh, we don't need reserves. Okay, pages stuck together, my apologies. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item F99, FinCom reserves, $150,000 to be provided as follows. Line J92 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Second. Further discussion? Not appearing. Now we can move on to the next one.
Okay. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item G91, town administration wages, $1,194,650, and line item G92, town administration expenses, $1,095,900, to be provided as follows. Line G91 and G92 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Second. Further discussion? None appearing. Move on to the next section. Mr. Berman?
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item H91, community services wages, $974,975, and line item H92, community services expenses, $436,850 to be provided as follows. Line H91 and H92 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Second. Further discussion? None appearing. Move on to the next section. Mr. Berman?
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item I-91, finance wages, $577,425, and line item I-92, finance expenses, $135,000 to be provided as follows. Line I-91 and I-92 for property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Second. Further discussion? None appearing. Move on to the next section.
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item J91, public safety wages, $8,868,606, and line item J92, public safety expenses, $393,835 to be provided as follows. Line lines J91 and J92 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Second. Further, Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think there might be a little error here someplace along the line. I think I'm back on line F99. You mentioned that as line J92. Should it not be F99? I heard the motion. It came in as line J92 instead of F99. The sheet we have in front of us listed as line J92 instead of F99.
I read it as it was on here, so.
I think if you look at your sheet, Barry, page 1 on the motions.
No, that was long ago.
Not that I want the FinCom to have any more money, but
I'm not sure what he heard.
Mr. Brown, is this for the public safety?
no. If you go back to line F99, the money for FinCom,
Oh,
you look at page 1, I think you made the motion that we come from line 92, J92, instead of F99. If
yeah,
I read
that's-
the,
Yeah, that's an error in here, yep. So
yeah,
it's-
there's an error on the, that's a second error, Bob. One more strike and you're out.
The money was right, though.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, F99.
So that should be F99? Is that
Right,
what
so
we've...
Mr. Meyer, should I just read that again to be clear, or is that?
Is there any objection to that being his motion? None appearing. Okay, we can move on. So we're back onto the J91.
Mr. Brown, where am I now? Am I?
You'd finish that one.
All right.
Yeah,
So
okay,
did-
we're on J91, excuse me, 92. I saw a hand. Oh, right here, yes.
Steve Herrick, Precinct 8. Barry, I'm just curious on the one we just talked about, not Mr. Brown's comment, J91. In a strange anomaly, FinCom was 7.2. Can you characterize, there is kind of a big increase on this line. Can you characterize the nature of the discussion that kept this from being unanimous on this particular line?
Which,
This is, I think we're back on, public safety wages.
oh, is that on the public safety?
Yeah.
I think the discussion on that revolved around what Bob was talking about the need for the additional dispatchers. And so some of us thought that was important to put in. And then the manager said that he wouldn't spend the money. So that's why it was not a unanimous vote.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Further discussion on that section? Not appearing. We
All right.
will move on to the next section. Mr. Berman?
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented, line item K91, Public Works wages, $2,361,075, and line item K92, Public Work expenses, $871,550, to be provided as follows. K92, $25,000 from the sale of cemetery lots to support cemetery expenses, and the balance of line K91 and K92 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Is there further discussion? Not appearing. We'll move on to the next section.
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item K93, Public Works, Snow and Ice expenses, $625,000. Line item K94, Public Works, Street lighting expenses, $200,000. Line item K95, Public Works, Rubbish collection and disposal expenses, $1,490,000, to be provided as follows. Lines K93, K94, and K95 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Further discussion? Not appearing. Next section.
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item L91, library wages, $1,089,155, and line item L92, library expenses, $292,730, to be provided as follows. Lines L91 and L92 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Further discussion? Mr. Simmons?
Thank you. Harry Simmons, Precinct 4. What's the nature of the dissenting votes on that from the Finance Committee?
I think what... That was for the overtime. Yeah. There was, we did add, I think, around $5,000 for overtime for the library, given the fact that there's going to be a lot of transition, a lot of moving around, and that the hours were going to be sort of unpredictable. So we added out of free cash an additional $5,000, and I think one or two people dissented on that. But the vote was what it was is for library overtime hours.
Is there another hand down here? No. Oh, same question. Okay, any further discussion? None appearing? Move on to the next section.
Sometimes it's really good not to have, 9-0 votes on all the time. It shows that we are at least talking about it. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item L91. Oh, no, I just did that. Okay. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item S99, School Department, $40,317,973 to be provided as follows. Line S99 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Further discussion? Yeah. Oh, the next slide.
I'll just read that number again. It's $40,317,973. A small piece of the budget.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Brown, Precinct 8. I certainly agree with Dr. Doherty on the, being where we are in a position of one of the lowest in the state. I know that for a fact because I went back and looked at the 1915 town report and it said the same thing.
Further discussion? None appearing? We will move on to the next section.
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item T99, Town Facilities, $700,167 to be provided as follows. Line T99 from property taxes, state aid, and non-property tax local receipts.
Second. Further discussion? None appearing? We'll move on to the next section.
Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget as presented for line item W99, Water Enterprise Fund, $5,231,944 to be provided as follows. Line W99, $100,000 from water reserves and the balance from user fees and other charges.
Further discussion? Yes. Mr. Moore?
Richard Moore, Precinct 2. The numbers on the sheet on page, the 39, don't match the numbers that are on page 236 for the sewer department. For the water department, they also don't match. And they have the numbers right for the stormwater for fiscal year 15, but not fiscal year 14.
Mr. Lasher?
It's not strike three. To make this as quick as possible, there's a budget for water and sewer. But some of it, for instance, is a certain percent of my salary is paid by water and sewer for the work I do on behalf of water and sewer. That is paid out of water and sewer. It has to be paid by the charges that are received by the fund. And it comes into the town as a revenue, not as an offset. It used to be an offset. So if you were to vote a portion of my salary and other overhead charges, it's already been voted in the general fund. You can't vote it again in the water fund unless you want to pay me double, which would be interesting. So the water budget is a little different than what town meeting actually votes to approve. The water budget is what it costs to run the water department. That's how rates need to be set. But you've already voted my full salary in the general fund, and some of it will come from this as revenues. So the voted numbers are less than the actual budgets for water and sewer. Stormwater, there is no overhead charge. I work for them for free. The stormwater fund is so small that we just don't bother assessing overhead charges. I hope that explains it.
It does, but it would be really nice if the papers actually showed it respectfully, so what was in the details could match what was in the...
If you look at, in the water budget section, if you look at the line that says overhead charges, I think it's called, if you were to add that to what's being asked you to vote on, then you'd get to the total budget.
Thank you, sir.
Further discussion? Not appearing. Next section.
Move that the town approve and appropriate FY 2015 budget as presented for line item Y99, Stormwater Enterprise Fund, $369,650 to be provided as follows. Line Y99 from user fees and other charges.
Okay, I think we might have skipped another one again.
I thought that.
So we'll do the Y while we're here. Is there any discussion on that? None appearing? Oh, there's a question? Where? I'm sorry, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Brown, Precinct 8. I think this is one that we, as taxpayers or ratepayers, should keep a close eye on. The town manager has indicated that there might be some strong ones coming down the road. And this is one of those that several court cases have said it might be a tax, it might be a fee. I know Ellen's shaking her head at me. She and I have gone around this several times. There have been several court decisions, depending on who's sitting on the Massachusetts Supreme Court, which way it has gone. So this is something we should very strongly take a look at, and I will be.
Okay, further discussion on that? All right, not appearing. I don't believe we did the X99
Let me
sewer.
go back. Again, the need for early childhood education, Y coming before X is not probably a good thing. But move that the town approve and appropriate proposed FY 2015 budget as presented, line item X99, Sewer Enterprise Fund, $5,852,079 to be provided as follows. Line X99, $150,000 from sewer reserves and the balance from user fees and other charges.
Second. Is there further discussion? Not appearing. We are now ready for a motion on the entire budget.
This is for the entire budget. Move that the town approve and appropriate the proposed FY 2015 budget, exclusive of state and county assessments, $93,176,884, representing the total of all motions made under Article 14 as amended. Funds are to be provided as set forth in said motions as amended.
Okay, any further discussion on the budget? Oh, second, okay. We have a hand up? Yes, Ms. Binder?
Thank you, Angela Binder, Precinct 5. I probably should have asked this 10 slides ago, don't know where it came. But I have a question. I heard a reference to the Killam School renovations, and I thought that that was on the capital improvement plan, and it was supposed to be this year. Did that get scratched? I appreciate it. All of the information is really wonderful, but when you're trying to find something, it's really hard to do.
If you look at page 252, it's a blue page. There's a couple of items that have been deleted, but they were in the capital plan, so we left them there with a line through them.
Okay.
Modular classrooms, school space need, Killam renovation, Woburn Street School have all had an X through them.
So Killam was the last school that was to be renovated, right? And so that is off the capital plan now?
Well, it wasn't an immediate plan, I guess is the fairest way to say it. If it comes back, it needs to be added to the capital plan.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, further discussion. This requires a 2/3 vote, so I will ask a standing count. All those in favor of the entire budget, please rise. Again, I'll ask my same 4 counters to help out.
37.
37. 33.
31.
31.
42.
I'm sorry,
42.
4-2, okay. And those opposed? Zero? Zero?
Zero.
Zero? And zero. Vote being 143 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the motion carries. That brings us back to Article 5. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Brown, Precinct 8. Move that the town vote to amend one or more of the votes taken under Article 11 of the April 22nd, 2013 annual town meeting relating to the fiscal budget year 2014 municipal budget, as amended by Article 11 of the subsequent town meeting of November 12th, 2013, and further amended by Article 5 of special town meeting on February 13th, 2014, the one I've missed in 20 years, and that the town vote to appropriate by transfer of some.
Mr. Arena moves that we dispense with the further reading of the motion. Is there a second? Is there any objection to that? Excuse me. A second to the motion, Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. For some of the new members of the town, there are 4 cemeteries in the town of Reading, 3 of which have veteran circles. One, the Forest Glen, presently has a monument on it. The other 2 do not. If you consider the $4,000, there are approximately, I think last year we put out 2,010 veterans markers, so we're talking approximately $2 per veteran. So I don't think that's a big amount of money to honor our veterans. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? None appearing. Are we ready for the vote? All those in... Oh, excuse me, FinCom report. Mr. Berman?
Wake up.
Actually, it's Mr. McNeese, I'm sorry.
At the, I'll keep it here for you. At the meeting on March 19th, 2014, the Finance Committee voted 8-0-0 in favor of the article.
Further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed?
Thank you very much on behalf of all the veterans.
And the motion carries. Business under Article 6, Mr. Greenfield.
Move that the town vote to amend one or more of the votes taken under Article 11 of the April 22nd, 2013 annual town meeting related to the fiscal year 2014 municipal budget as amended by Article 11.
Mr. Arena moves that we dispense with the further reading of the motion. Is there any objection? None appearing. Is there a second to the motion? Thank you. Mr. LaLasha?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In the last few years, we've had a surplus in health insurance and chosen to put it into the OPEB fund. This year, with funds being tight, we realized that that wasn't the best idea. So fortunately, there are some surpluses in this budget this year, about $500,000, which, to our town accountant Sharon Engstrom's point earlier, will not show up as regeneration next year, but we are able to offset the snow and ice for this winter. As has been discussed, the school schematic design issue has been removed for the motion. I discussed the other capital. Vocational enrollment was a little higher at Minuteman. The 2 out-of-district vocational schools, we sometimes don't know until March what the actual bill will be for the year. We were able to have some extra funds in the Administrative Services Department to also help offset the costs. And one of them was November town meeting approved $40,000 to begin funding the results of the pay and class study. We said if we didn't have the results in time, we'd return the money, and there's the money back. We had a couple of unexpected needs for laptop upgrades because of Microsoft's sudden discontinuance of one of their operating systems or the support thereof. And we had some surpluses in some of the public works accounts. And there's the snow and ice deficit. We had $100,000 worth of fire overtime caused by injuries. And the very last item is some turnover in the police department and some new hires and the equipment required. The good news is, despite all the snow, we're only using $250,000 of free cash, which isn't so bad right now for this time of year.
FinCom report, Mr. Greenfield.
In the Finance Committee meeting on March 26, the Finance Committee voted to support this Article 900.
Further discussion? Are we ready for the vote? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? The motion carries. Business under Article 7, Mr. Sexton.
Move that the town vote to transfer $300,000 received from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in payment for development within the town's 40R smart growth zoning districts from free cash into the Smart Growth Stabilization Fund.
Is there a second? Second. Ms. Engstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Over the course of the last year or so, we've received $300,000 from the state in 40R smart growth development payments. This article will move those funds from free cash and into a smart growth stabilization fund. We typically use that smart growth stabilization fund to fund additional road work. But in fiscal 15, we have significant construction projects already planned, so there is no planned use in fiscal 15.
FinCom report, Mr. Perkins.
In the Finance Committee meeting on March 19th, the Finance Committee voted to recommend the subject matter of Article 7 by a vote of 701. The one abstention was as a result of possible conflict of interest.
Further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 8. Mr. Arena.
Move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $508,899 to the irrevocable trust for other post-employment benefits liabilities.
Is there a second? Second. Ms. Engstrom.
This article is to move the OPEB contributions that were approved as part of the fiscal 14 budget into the OPEB irrevocable trust. The contributions you see noted for the enterprise funds make up 100% of the annual required contribution as calculated by our actuary on the most recent valuation. Because the enterprise funds are able to fully fund their annual required contribution for OPEB, the OPEB obligation will be fully funded within an 18-year period ending in 2030. The contribution for the general fund, however, only represents a portion of the annual required contribution. Thus, it will take in excess of 30 years to fully fund the general fund's OPEB obligation.
FinCom report, Mr. Greenfield.
Finance Committee voted on March 19th to support this article by a vote of 800.
Is there further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 9, Mr. Arena.
Move to indefinitely postpone the subject matter of Article 9.
Is there a second? Second. Is there an explanation? Mr. LeLasher.
On Monday, bond counsel ruled that we didn't have to do this.
Is there further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor of the indefinite postponement, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 10. Mr. Ensminger.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town raise by borrowing or transfer from available funds or otherwise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 for the purpose of making roadway, pedestrian, and similar improvements, including the cost of easements, consulting services, audits, plans, documents, cost estimates, bidding services.
Mr. Arena moves that we dispense with the further reading of the motion. Is there any objection? None appearing. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Let's see. Mr. LaLasher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Last November, this body approved $1 million worth of debt. It was done slightly in a different order than we would choose to do. The state required that the town show good faith by a vote of town meeting indicating it would support a project that we would share the cost before we knew the cost. We estimated it at $1 million. The state since changed its mind on a couple of items. Now the estimate is $1.3 million. And in that $1.3 million, as you can see from the slide behind me, there's a pretty healthy contingency of almost 15%. But quite honestly, until the state actually goes out to bid and the bids come in, there'll be costs that Reading's responsible for and costs that the states are responsible for. The state must award to the lowest bid. The lowest bid may not necessarily have all the lowest bids for Reading's items. It's just pot luck. For now, we think $1.3 million with that contingency is sufficient. And we need, again, a 2/3 vote to authorize debt. So this is adding $300,000 to something you did last November.
FinCom report. Ms. Herrick.
On March 19th, FinCom voted on the subject matter of Article 10 in a vote of 9-0-0.
Is there further discussion? Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Brown, Precinct 2. I'd like to amend the motion to read 225,000, thank you, instead of 300.
Oh, you want to change 300,000 to 225,000?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Okay, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This will get rid of those fancy traffic lights. We talk about, gee whiz, we got, we need money here, we need money there. Well, $75,000 will fill a lot of potholes. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? No. All right. First, we will take a vote on the proposed amendment. All those in favor of reducing 300,000 to 225,000, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion does not carry. This requires a 2/3 vote, so I would ask my counters to help out again. All those in favor of the motion, please rise.
$37.
37.
34.
34.
30.
30? Yes.
42.
22.
42.
Oh, 42. I'm sorry, 42. All those opposed? 0.
1.
1.
0.
0. 0. The vote being 143 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the motion carries. Business under Article 11. Mr. Halsey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by purchase, gift, eminent domain, or otherwise permanent water easements upon and over the existing sewer and drain easements located on Assessor's Map 28, lots 112 and 113.
Mr. Arena moves that we dispense with the further reading of the motion. Is there any objection? Not appearing. Is there a second to the motion? Thank you. Mr. Zamboris.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members. This is an easement we need for the water projects that are about to get underway. It's over 2 properties on Belmont Street, one number 87, I'm sorry, and the other one 93. It's an over existing sewer and drain easement. We won't be actually increasing the area of the easement. We'd just be changing the use to add, to allow us the right to install a water main in through there too. We've had appraisals on the property. The award, if the homeowners elect to get paid for it rather than donate it, would be $200 each. There's two properties. Number 87, the existing easement area is 1,372 feet for sewer and drain. After the vote, if this is approved, it would be 1,372 square feet for sewer, water, and drain. As with number 93, the existing easement area is 1,447 square feet. That's the existing easement, and by the time we're through, if this is passed, it would include sewer, water, and drainage. In the shaded area, what you see shaded in the screen, that's the existing drain and sewer easement, which would be also authorized to approve it for a water easement too.
FinCom report, Mr. Murray.
The Finance Committee recommends the subject matter of Article 11 by a vote of 9-0-0 at the meeting on March 19th, 2014.
Is there further discussion? Yes, Mr. Mon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Mon, Precinct 4. Mr. Zamboris, did we already vote on this a couple of 10 meetings ago? And why is this different from what we already voted on?
What we voted for was the sewer and water easement over the property that's owned by town on, and under the control of the Conservation Commission. Which is just to the right of what's shaded in this portion here. That was the portion that was previously approved. We had some plans in Town Hall that indicated the existing easement going through the private properties was sewer, water, and drain. We researched the easement document in Registry of Deeds and found out it was only sewer and drain. So we have to take the water now also.
Is there another hand over here? Yes. Mr. Downing.
Jack Downing of Precinct 8. Is there any reason to believe that for either of those two properties we're going to need eminent domain?
In today's economy, I mean, the vote's taken as eminent domain. We had the appraisals to cover that. We don't know. They'll probably each accept the $200, I would assume.
Well, would it be fair? Could I make an amendment to strike after the word gift, comma, and eminent domain in the first line?
Where is it exactly? I'm sorry.
Oh, on the strike the comma after gift and the words eminent domain. So we would then read purchase, gift, or otherwise.
It's gift, otherwise. All right, if you get that. Oh, hold on one second.
Okay, can you repeat the words that are going to be added?
No, to be removed.
Okay.
Remove the comma after gift and the words eminent domain. I just want to take the eminent domain
I'm
out.
not seeing the word eminent domain in there.
I'm not seeing the words in here.
Move that the town vote to authorize. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, I see it now.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay, you all set? Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, you all set? Okay. Any further discussion on that? Yes, up in the back.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks, Bruce McKenzie, Precinct 8. Has the town actually talked with the property owners? I really hope you have.
We've actually been able to talk to one. We've had numerous phone calls to one of the residents. We sent them letters. One of the neighbors that we spoke to actually was gracious enough to set up a meeting that The other property owner had indicated they would be there, but did not show up.
Okay, thank you for trying.
Okay, further discussion? Mr. Monaghan?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jimmy Mon, Precinct 4. A question on the amendment. If we take out the word eminent domain, but leave in the word otherwise, can the town still take it by eminent domain? Okay, I would like to point out then that this is an important town project. A lot of energy has gone into it, design money, borings have been taken. If for some reason we cannot get this easement, we will not be able to proceed with this project that's already underway. I think we need to leave in the option, although the least desirable, I still think we need the option of taking it by eminent domain if that's the only thing left to us.
Did we have a comment by the town council, or are you all set?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ellen Callahan Doucette, representing Town Council. Under Chapter 79, the eminent domain statute, you have to use the words eminent domain, or otherwise will not suffice. So if you can't purchase it from them, if they won't donate it, this gives you the option to do an order of taking.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, first we will vote on the proposed amendment. All those in favor of removing the words eminent domain? It's not town meeting's decision to decide what's illegal. I mean, we can vote on something that's illegal, whether it's right or not. You've given them the town meeting can take actions that's not legal. It's not advisable, but they can, and you've advised them against it. Sure.
It's not illegal to take out the words eminent domain, but if you take them out, then you can't exercise your eminent domain.
My point exactly.
You're limited to purchase or gift.
So the town...
it's not an illegal amendment. It just doesn't give you the full authority you will need.
Correct. So the point is, we can take a vote on it.
You can vote on it.
Yes.
It's not illegal.
Right.
It's not advisable.
Correct. Okay. We have a point of order?
I think Town Council should direct her attention to giving legal opinion and not tell us that whether it's advisable or not. Thank you.
Well, it is Town Council's job to advise. Okay, all those in favor of the proposed amendment, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion does not carry. All those in favor of the main motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 12. Mr. Sexton.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to release all of the town's right, title, and interest in approximately 141 square feet of the drain and sewer easement located upon the property at 63 Whittier Road, Assessors Map 33, Parcel 1.
Mr. Arena moves that we dispense with the further reading of the motion. Is there any objection? None? Is there a second to that? Second to the motion? Thank you. Mr. Zamboros.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members. Well, this one's just the opposite of the last one. We're going to take away this time we're going to give up this time rather than take one. There was a house that was existing house on Whittier Road. The existing house was slightly in the easement. The property was sold to a family member. They're building a new house, and they lessened the impact on what the encroachment onto the existing sewer and drain easement, but there was still a slight encroachment. And what this does, it's easier going to the maps than trying to read anything. This one here is the existing property, the way it sat before they started any construction. The yellow is the sewer and drain easement. The sewer and drain easement only contains a sewer. It does not contain a drain. The likelihood of it ever needing a drain line through there is very negligent based on the grades of the existing roadways. And if you see towards the left-hand side of the house, it did encroach into the easement. This next slide, same easement, The hatched area is where the new house is proposed. The sideline is, the left side of the house is a little bit in from the sideline, how the left rear corner just barely touches the easement. And what is being proposed, I'm sorry for reducing the sales scale, but it's just what the easement plan comes out to. The yellow portion is the balance of what is being left of the sewer and drain easement. And if you can see, there's a little orange triangle in between the yellow and the house. That is of the 141 square feet of the easement that the town would be giving up its rights and interest to, so that there's enough room between the foundation of the dwelling and the sewer easement itself. It doesn't, what's left of the sewer easement still gives the town plenty of room to maintain and access the sewer line and even dig it up and repair it if we have to.
FinCom report, Mr. Leidecker.
The Finance Committee meeting on March 19th, we voted in favor of this 8-0 with 1 abstention, even though it's unlikely that there's going to be any financial consequence.
Is there further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 15. Mr. Arena.
You'll all be glad you were here for the next 20 minutes. It's pouring out of power. Move that the town vote to approve an Affordable Housing Trust Fund allocation plan pursuant to Chapter 140 of the Acts of 2001, entitled An Act Authorizing the Town of Reading to Establish an Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Is there a second? Second, thank you. Mr. LaLasher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is an article in front of town meeting every year. This is no change from last year. Okay, there's a little change. We changed the date. The bigger issue for the selectmen and the community to discuss at large, which we've begun the discussion, is the concept of affordable housing. The $260,000 in the fund isn't going to go far. So we really need to come up with a funding source to this and then to be able to take some action. But for now, we're just renewing the plan from last year.
FinCom report, Mr. Berman.
At our meeting on March 19th, Finance Committee voted to support the article by a vote of 7-1 with 1 abstention.
Is there further discussion? None appearing. We're ready for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 16. Mr. Ensminger.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town vote to authorize the following revolving funds for certain town departments under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half.
Mr. Arena moves that we dispense with the further reading of the motion. Is that acceptable? Is there a second to the motion? Thank you. Mr. LaLasher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There is one slight change from a prior year, as is mentioned in the warrant report. The purpose of the Public Health Clinics and Services Fund is being slightly broadened to beyond clinics. As an example, Melrose, which is in our regional health district, has a program to provide bicycle helmets to residents at a lower cost as a matter of public health. So this fund would be allowed to do things such as that.
FinCom report, Ms. Perry.
FinCom voted March 19th, 9-0-0 to support the subject matter of this article.
Is there further discussion? Mr. Mon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Mon, Precinct 4. Help me out here with the conservation consulting fee. That $25,000, where is that coming from?
Let's see, is there a balance? It's in the warrant report.
It says that up there the balance is none.
My recollection is this is a fund that's been set up. I don't think it's been used, if ever, not very often. Do you recall ever running into it on the Conservation Commission?
Well, our bylaws allow us to collect this consulting fee from the applicant. Now, I hate to turn down $25,000 if you want to give it to us.
Well, this is, again, an annual maximum of $25,000, so if you had several collections from many people, it could at most be $25,000 in the revolving fund.
So the fund would come from the applicant. It doesn't come out of the town budget.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? None appearing. Ready for the vote? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Business under Article 17, Mr. Halsey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $605,869 in anticipation of reimbursement from the state under Chapter 44, Section 6, Massachusetts General Law, or pursuant to any other enabling authority for highway projects in accordance with Chapter 90, Massachusetts General Laws.
Is there a second? Second, thank you. Mr. Zamboris?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members. As Bob had mentioned earlier, the current Chapter 90 allocation is slightly down from last year. Last year we were about $606,000, so now we're at $605,869. It's a $473 decrease. It almost was a $300,000, but we didn't get the other $300,000, as Bob mentioned. This allows the town to use our Chapter 90 funds in the roadway projects. Chapter 90 is a reimbursement program, so we have to authorize the funding and anticipate in receipt of the Chapter 90 grants. Even though this motion allows us to, we've never sold any debt in order to pay for the Chapter 90 projects. In total this year, using our Chapter 90 and our capital funds, we'll be spending $1,055,869 on roadway projects. That does not include the debt that we're incurring for the $8 million West Street project. This is just our local roadways itself.
FinCom report, Mr. Perkins.
The Finance Committee recommends the subject matter of Article 17 by a vote of 9-0-0 at their meeting on March 19th.
Is there further discussion? None appearing. All those in favor of the motion under Article 17, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. We're now up to Article 18. Let's see, Mr. Sexton. Excuse me, I have to take another vote on Article 17 to make sure that was unanimous. It requires a two-thirds vote. All those in favor of the motion under Article 17, please raise your hand. And those opposed? It is a unanimous vote. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Sexton.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town vote pursuant to Section 2-6 of the Reading Home Rule Charter to declare the seats of certain town meeting members to be vacant and remove certain described persons from their position as town meeting members for failure to take the oath of office within 30 days following the notice of election, or for failure to attend 1/2 or more of the town meeting sessions during the previous year, or take any other action with respect thereto.
Okay, Mr. Arena asked that we dispense with the further reading. Is there any objection? None appearing. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you. The way this works is there are 5 names that are on the motion right now that will be removed if we vote it the way it is. But we ask the precincts to discuss this and take a vote to recommend whether or not the person should be on this list. So I will call out the precinct chairman. We'll start with precinct 1 is Mr. Webb.
Doug Webb, Precinct 1 Chairman. We voted yes to remove both names from the list.
Which means you would like them to remain as town meeting members?
Correct.
Correct, okay. So again, this is almost reverse, where we've made a motion to remove the names from the removal list. No? Let me ask again. Mr. Webb, did you say you wanted to keep these people in town meeting?
Yes, we want to keep them in town meeting, but we voted yes to remove them from the
Correct.
list.
So we're asking to remove them from the list, just as I said. We'll be remove them from the removal list. This gets confusing, I know, but so we will take a vote. If we vote yes to remove these two names, it means they stay in town meeting. Does everybody understand that? Okay. We have a motion to remove those two names, Roger D'Entremont and William Grace. Is there a second to that motion? Second? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. So they will remain. Is there? Yeah. Was there any discussion on that? Okay. Next is Precinct 3. Mr. Crook? Oh, no, you're not. I'm sorry. That's Precinct 2. Yeah, we want, there's nobody on Precinct 2. Who?
Precinct 2, Mr. Moderator.
Oh, it's not accurate? Oh, excuse me. My list is not accurate. Precinct 2, Mr. Crook?
Stephen Crook, Precinct 2, Precinct Chair. The precinct voted to keep all 4 members in town meeting.
Okay. So you've asked them to remove them from this motion?
Yes, please remove all 4 from the list.
That would be my error. What's that?
Is the slide correct or not? No. No. So what are the 4 names? Are they? Are those the 4 names in Precinct 2?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion to let them stay in town meeting, but remove them from this list. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Is there any discussion on that? Not appearing. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Now, Precinct 3.
Precinct 3 wants to remove Brian Donahue from the list.
And keep him in town meeting.
Right, we want to keep him on the list and remove Westerman from the list.
So you want Westerman to stay as a town meeting member?
Correct.
Okay. You got that? Yep. Everybody understand what we're voting on? Is there a second to that? Is there any discussion? All those in favor of that amendment, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Now what are we up to?
Precinct 4.
Precinct 4. Precinct 4, Mr. Hartzler. Oh, there you
Precinct
are.
4, Glenn Hartzler, Chair. We voted to remove Stephen Goldie from the list.
On that list? Okay. So you want to remove him from the list and keep him in town meeting? All right, okay. Second to that? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Those opposed? The motion carries. Now, what are we up to? Precinct 5. And Ms. Binder.
Angela Binda, Precinct 5. On Monday, Precinct 5 voted 16-0 to retain Jared Bellevue as a town meeting member.
Okay, and so we will remove him from this list. Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion carries. What are we up to now? Precinct 6, Ms. Quinn. Okay, and what are the names on that? 2 names.
Mary Ann Quinn, Precinct 6. I'm going to defer to Bob Lynch. Are you in the room, Bob, who ran the meeting?
Mr. Lynch?
I do not recall discussing whether or not we would retain Mr. Miles and Mr. Driscoll.
Bob Lynch, former Precinct 6 Chairman.
We discussed it. We had a lot of business going on that night, and my recollection is we voted to have them both removed from the list.
Move from the list to retain him in town meeting. Okay, is there a second to that? Second. Is there any discussion? All those in, oh, is there discussion? I'm sorry, Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In general, I don't think this should remain in the charter. I'd like to take a sense of the committee if they feel the same, of the board if they feel the same way.
You're asking, well, okay, we'll do that at the end. Okay, is there another discussion, Mr. Daddario?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ron Daddario, Precinct 6. What Bob said, he didn't think we discussed it. I was there, and I don't remember discussing it. I think we may have overlooked it. So my only question is, are either of these two gentlemen here?
Are they in the room?
Okay, then thank you.
Okay.
Just in case they were here.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. And those opposed? And the motion carries. Article on Precinct 7. Precinct 7, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Carpenter, Chair of Precinct 7. Mr. Downing and Mr. Phillips attended the precinct meeting and gave sufficient cause as to why they should remain in town meeting, so we voted to remove them from the list and keep them in town in town meeting. No one had heard from Mr. Walsh, so we voted to keep him on the list and remove him from town meeting.
Okay. Is there a second to that amendment? Second. Is there any further discussion? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brian Walsh, Precinct 7. I am here and would like to be removed from the list, please.
Like to remove. Okay. Do we have a second to that motion? Second. Okay. Okay. So we will take it all as one. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of, well, at the first motion removes the first two names from the list. So we'll take a vote on that one first. All those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion carries. And now we will take up Mr. Walsh's. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And those opposed? The motion carries. Precinct 8 is Mr. Brown.
I don't believe we had anybody to be removed.
Pardon me?
I don't think we had anybody to be removed. I don't remember at our meeting even talking about it. But
Is Mr. Quinn, is that, yes? You, Mr. Quinn? Mr. Quinn moves that we remove the name of Mr. Quinn from the list. Is there a second to that? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Now, this is a little unorthodox, but I will take quick. We do have a charter review committee right now, so we will take a quick poll. I guess you're asking, should we remove this clause from the charter? Just a very quick, no discussion on it, but all those that would be in favor of removing this from the charter, just raise your hand. And those opposed? Okay. Now we need to vote on that entire motion. All those in favor of the motion? Brian Donahue from Precinct 3. And Richard Abadi from Precinct 4. All those in favor of the motion as amended? Oh, is that a discussion or no? Oh, all those in favor of the motion as amended, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. One last bit of business before we adjourn. Mr. Carpenter, did you have a point of personal privilege?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, thank you. Some of you may have noticed these little threefold brochures that say your property, your taxes, your neighbors, and so on. They've been at the polling places. There were some on the table out here tonight. those come from about 10 years worth of discussion of especially it gets discussed when we like barely make a quorum here in town meeting or when there's a precinct with several unfilled positions, and how do we get more town meeting members? And this is my little informational solution that it tries to remove some of the mystery from what we do here and suggest the process that someone can use to join us. And I ask you to take one or two of these from the table in the back as you leave. And when you find somebody who's really interested, who's asking you questions about it, give them one of these. Now, there's a little test here. Oh, gee, there's a lot of words here. There's a lot of complexity. Exactly. We want people who can understand a zoning amendment, who can understand the budget, who can understand, whether removing them from the list or not removing from the list really means that they're going to be in town meeting or not. And that takes a certain amount of thinking and reasoning skills. If they can't deal with the brochure, sometimes it takes a lot of thinking and reasoning skills. If they can't read if they can't or won't read the brochure, then take it back and find somebody else. But we need to find people who, especially younger people. Look around. There's some young folks here, and thank you for stepping up and becoming the new generation. And we need more folks who will carry on this 375-year tradition and keep it going. So that's what these brochures are. Please use them to help increase and strengthen our numbers. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Arena, we have a motion to adjourn sine die. Is there a second? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, motion carries. This town meeting stands adjourned sine die.